Chapter 119. On the surface, Wuxiao appeared to be overbearing and strict, but he really spoiled Gu Nianji to the core. Even looking at the ugly pajamas, Wuxiao could see the word good in Wuxiao's eyes. He really had to give it to him. Zhao Liangzi also silently cursed Wuxiaoheng for being so protective of her. What if Nianji gets married in the future? Zhao Liangzi couldn't help shuddering and silently lit a candle for Gu Nianji's future husband. When Gu Nianji saw Wuxiaoheng, there was no one else in her eyes. She began to ramble on about all the things she had experienced since coming to the United States. Of course, she cleverly hid the fact that when Shuyi had installed a camera in their old apartment. Wuxiaoheng remained silent the entire time, quietly watching the video. Gu Nianji was the only one talking. At the end, Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang couldn't help yawning. Gu Nianji finally snapped out of her daze and said sheepishly, "Oh, was I too long-winded? Uncle Hua, I'll make it short in the future. Keep in touch." She looked at her watch and saw that it was almost time for afternoon classes. Wuxiaoheng finally said, "How many of those black t-shirts do you have?" Gu Nianji blushed. As expected, the original owner had caught her red-handed in front of her face. How embarrassing. Gu Nianji stammered, "No. Not many. How many exactly?" Wuxiaoheng frowned. "This is very important." "Just 4. Gu Nianji's head nearly hit the table as she spoke. Her expression was one of repentance. Wuxiaoheng grunted, "Take them all out for Big Xiong to destroy." Wuxiaoheng usually only gave orders and never explained. However, seeing how embarrassed Gu Nianji was, he still said, "Those t-shirts of mine all have a special logo. If someone from the United States sees it, it will bring you trouble." Gu Nianji, Yin Shixiang, and Zhao Liangzi all understood and worshipped Wuxiaoheng even more. They really hadn't thought of this. Wuxiaoheng's black t-shirts were specially made by the Empire's military and had special markings. If the CIA obtained it, even if it was just a corner of the shirt, they might be able to restore the entire shirt. Then, they would be able to deduce that a high-ranking military major general of the Empire or someone closely related to the major general had come to the United States. Thinking about it this way was indeed very disadvantageous to Gu Nianji and Yin Shixiang. "Wuxiao, I'll destroy it immediately." Yin Shixiang immediately patted his chest and promised. He quickly rushed to Gu Nianji's room and rummaged through the drawers and cabinets for her pajamas. Gu Nianji blushed even harder. She was extremely embarrassed, but she sincerely stood up and bowed her head. "Uncle Hua, I was wrong. I won't do it again." "Yeah, you didn't bring anything else, did you?" Wuxiaoheng asked worriedly. No. Gu Nianji shook her head like a rattled drum. "Just this one." She was unwilling to give up and pouted. She sounded like she was about to cry. "But I only have these 4. After all these years, she had finally managed to smuggle them out right under Wuxiaoheng's nose. She felt like crying just thinking about it. Wuxiaoheng looked at her quietly for a while. He pulled out a cigarette and tapped it on the computer desk. He couldn't find where he'd put his lighter. Zhao Liangzi, who was usually very observant, quickly came over and lit the cigarette for him. Wuxiaoheng took a deep drag and said dryly, "You can pick a few more from my place when you get back." "Really? That's a promise. You can't lie." Gu Nianji's head snapped up, a dazzling smile on her face. Wuxiaoheng averted his eyes and lowered his eyes to take another drag of his cigarette. "Yeah." He blew out a ring of smoke, blurring the image in front of the camera. "That's great. Uncle Hua, I have to go to class. I'll contact you tomorrow." Gu Nianji was very satisfied. She waved at the camera and happily turned to leave. When she was out of Yin Shixiang's room and out of sight, Wuxiaoheng nodded to Zhao Liangzi. "Delete all the video of you and Nianji." "Yes, sir." Zhao Liangzi understood the rules. He walked back to his computer and began deleting the RAM and cache. Yin Shixiang walked over with 4 black t-shirts. He said to Wuxiaoheng, "Mr. Hua, should I destroy them now?" Wuxiaoheng nodded and watched Yin Shixiang put the 4 t-shirts into the stainless steel trash can in the room. He lit the hem of the shirt with his lighter, then threw it in and closed the lid. The black smoke from the burning t-shirts was trapped in the stainless steel trash can. It didn't cause the room's smoke detectors to go off. Yin Shixiang burned the 4 black t-shirts to ash and flushed them down the toilet before sitting back down. He said to Wuxiaoheng and Zhao Liangzi through the camera, "Nianji said everything she wanted to say. I have nothing else to add. But I still have something I'd like Mr. Hua's approval and authorization." He paused, then continued, "It's like this, I want to teach Nianji how to cook." Zhao Liangzi coughed violently when he heard this. He gasped, "Big Xiong, what are you doing? Teaching Nianji how to cook? Only you can think of that." "I'm serious." Yin Shixiang had already guessed that they would laugh at him. He quickly explained, "Think about it, Nianji will be 18 in the second half of the year, but she hasn't even cooked rice before. She probably doesn't even know how to wash rice, let alone cook. She's going to get married in the future. With a husband and children, how can she let them eat takeout every day? Even if she has the money, it doesn't make sense. If her husband thinks she's not virtuous and doesn't know how to cook, then the quality of her marriage can't be guaranteed." "Aha, Big Xiong, you're overthinking it. I think Nianji should really call you godfather." Zhao Liangzi slapped his thigh and laughed so hard he couldn't stand straight. Wu Xiaoheng frowned. He instinctively didn't want Gu Nianji to learn how to cook. "Big Xiong, you shouldn't care about these things. Just look after her and make sure she gets through the next 6 months safely." "Oh." Yin Shixiang didn't expect Wu Xiaoheng to completely disagree. "You mean you don't want to teach her?" But if he didn't teach her, then he would have to cook every day. Yin Shixiang would rather go on a mission and run through a hail of bullets than run around the kitchen. That would be too degrading. Cooking is such a simple thing. Even if you don't teach Nianji, she'll learn it on her own. Zhao Liangzi understood what Yin Shixiang meant and immediately thought of an idea for him. "So you don't have to worry. Just buy her a couple of cookbooks later. A straight-A student learns everything quickly. Don't worry." Yin Shixiang suddenly understood and gave Zhao Liangzi a thumbs up. "I can't thank you enough. You'll repay me with your body when we get back." "Get out. Who wants you to repay me with your body? My virginity is for my future wife." Zhao Liangzi refused without hesitation. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi joked around for a long time before getting serious. He said to Wu Xiaoheng, "How are things on your side? I've been feeling uneasy." Wu Xiaoheng and Zhao Liangzi couldn't decide whether to tell him or not. However, Yin Shixiang keenly sensed that something was wrong. Under his repeated questioning, Zhao Liangzi received authorization from Wu Xiaoheng to tell him. "There was a problem with our operation. The enemy was always one step ahead of us to avoid our pursuit and counterattack. We injured 2 people." Yin Shixiang inhaled sharply and was speechless for a long time. Gu Nianji had been very happy ever since her video call with Wu Xiaoheng. She finished her afternoon classes and returned to the apartment from school. She hurriedly ate dinner and did her homework. After washing up, she slipped into Yin Shixiang's room and pestered him to video call Wu Xiaoheng. Of course, Yin Shixiang didn't agree. He knew that he had already taken a great risk with this video call. He regretted it, so no matter how much Gu Nianji begged, he wouldn't agree. However, Yin Shixiang couldn't resist Gu Nianji's pestering. In the end, he had no choice but to tell her the truth. "It's not that I don't want you to video call them, but it's too dangerous for them." As he spoke, he told Gu Nianji about what happened with Wu Xiaoheng. This was the second monthly vote of 2,300 plus 1. There was still the third chapter after that, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes at the end of the month. "Our monthly votes are invalid if we don't vote. Hurry up and vote." Oh, intersection. Oh. Chapter 120. You're saying that the enemy was always able to evade their attacks and retaliate, and Uncle Hua's team even injured 2 people? Gu Nianji grew nervous. "Is Uncle Hua okay? Did you see him get hurt?" She paced around Yin Shixiang's room like an ant on a hot pan. "He shouldn't be hurt, right? I remember seeing Uncle Hua's head, arms and legs all fine, but I couldn't see the clothes he was wearing. But Uncle Hua was sitting down and didn't stand up. Maybe his legs were actually hurt?" "Don't spin so fast, it's making me dizzy." Yin Shixiang shook his head with a wry smile. "Don't worry, no one in this world can hurt Hu Xiao. He wasn't the one who got hurt, it was one of our team members." Gu Nianji sighed deeply and pressed her palms together, bowing to the 4 corners of the room, praying to the gods and Buddhas to protect Hu Xiaoheng and keep him safe. Okay, go back and chant, stop praying here." Yin Shixiang looked down on the gods and Buddhas. "There was never a savior, the only one who could save us was ourselves." Gu Nianji snorted, "I'm asking for peace of mind, don't be sarcastic." She wasn't in a hurry to leave and sat on the 2-seater sofa in Yin Shixiang's room with a frown. "But what's going on, do they have a clue?" "Not yet." Yin Shixiang slapped the table. "I suspect there's a mole." "Are you sure?" Gu Nianji was confused. If there really is a mole and they know about Uncle Hua's operation, then they would have failed in the Czech Republic, right? "That's true." Yin Shixiang fell into deep thought. He crossed one arm across his chest and twisted his jaw with the other as he paced around the room. Why did nothing happen in the Czech Republic but something happened in Vienna, Austria? Why is the Whitewater Security Group so powerful? How did they manage to organize a counterattack in 2 weeks? Gu Nianji felt that there must be an important link missing, so the cause and result didn't match up. She sat in Yin Shixiang's room for a while before returning to her own room. Since video calling Hua Xiaoheng and his team would pose a major threat to their safety, Gunyanji didn't ask for it anymore. When she recalled how Hua Xiaoheng and the others had risked their lives to have a video call with them in the afternoon, she felt a sense of lingering fear. If Hua Xiaoheng and the others were in a disadvantageous position because of this reason, Gunyanji believed that she would not be able to absolve herself from the blame even if she died 100 times. She returned to her laptop and sat down. Her eyes stared at the screen of her laptop. In fact, she wasn't looking at anything. Her eyes weren't even focused. Her fingers clicked on the mouse as she muttered, "Someone found our location first. This should be the fault of the navigation system, right?" However, she also knew that the satellite navigation system Hua Xiaoheng and the others were using was the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System developed by the Empire itself. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be such a loophole. Zhao Yangze and the others had this preconceived notion, so they had always thought that there was a traitor. They hadn't thought to test the Nandu satellite navigation system. Gunyanji didn't know much about the system, so she didn't have any prejudices. When she thought about problems, she was able to get straight to the point. That night, she thought about this question over and over in her mind. Finally, with a light tap of her finger, she opened the computer programming software on her laptop. Pursing her lips, she began to write a small test software. She had learned this skill from the computer genius Zhao Yangze when she was with Hua Xiaoheng and the others at the Special Operations Forces base. The program she needed to write was very simple. Its main function was to send out some signals to test the safety and stability of the satellite navigation system. She knew the frequency of the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System, so she quickly began to run the software and continuously sent out detection signals to the system. These signals could test whether the system was working properly. Half an hour passed, and her software was still running smoothly. The signals were sent out and reflected back to her laptop with a special receiver. This special receiver was Yin Shixiang's instrument. It could amplify electromagnetic signals just like the antenna of a television. However, after midnight, the software Gunyanji had set up suddenly began to beep loudly. Gunyanji, who had fallen asleep on the table, suddenly woke up with a start. She rubbed her eyes and looked at the screen of her laptop. The software she had written had a large, thick red line on it. In her programming language, it meant that the signal was being recycled. What was going on? Gunyanji thought she was dreaming. She rubbed her eyes again and pinched herself hard to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. Her software showed that the detection signal sent to the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System had coincided with another set of unknown signals. When they were reflected back, she had received them all. That was why there were bold red lines on her computer. What was going on? In a place like the United States, other than Gunyanji, who else could send a signal to the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System? Could it be Yin Shixiang? Gunyanji quickly ran to Yin Shixiang's room door and knocked. Brother Xiong, what are you doing?" Yin Shixiang was still in a daze and was woken up by Gunyanji's knocking. He straightened his messy hair and shuffled in his slippers to open the door. "What is it? Yanji? You're sleeping?" Gunyanji pointed at Yin Shixiang. Her eyes moved from his fluffy, sleepy face to his wrinkled pajamas. "Yes, you just woke me up." Yin Shixiang said angrily, "You better have something important to say. Otherwise, no matter how much I love you, I won't let you disturb my sleep." Gunyanji snorted. "You can take care of yourself." If it wasn't Yin Shixiang, then it had to be someone else in the United States who was continuously sending detection signals to the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System. Judging from the intensity of the lines, Gunyanji was certain that the launch site was not far from where they were. Gunyanji excitedly pulled Yin Shixiang into her room and pointed at the bold red lines that were bouncing up and down on her laptop. She enunciated each word clearly. "Brother Xiong, do you see that? I think our Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System has been hacked by an outsider." "WTF? What did you say?" Yin Shixiang was completely awake now. "You can't say something like that. You have to know that the system is the most secretive system in our country. How could it be hacked? If it was really hacked, how could Hua Xiao and the others not be captured? I don't think you understand this system." Gunyanji shook her head. "Brother Xiong, think of a way to contact Uncle Hua and the others again. I have something very important to say to them." It was the third watch. They were asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes at the end of the month. Their monthly votes would be invalid if they didn't vote. Hurry up and vote. Chapter 121. Yin Shixiang was completely awake now. He combed his messy hair with his hands and stared at the laptop in Gu Nianji's room, which had a thick red line on it. Is this thing really reliable? He walked over and picked up the mouse. He clicked a few times on Gu Nianji's laptop to check her source code. Although Yin Shixiang wasn't as computer savvy as Zhao Liangzi or Gu Nianji, he wasn't a computer idiot. He had a master's degree in computer science. Yin Shixiang sighed in amazement as he read line after line of source code. You're really a genius. If I remember correctly, you only learned computer language from little Zay for half a year, right? Gu Nianji cocked her head and folded her hands behind her back. She winked at him. Computer language is actually very easy. It has its own context and logic. Also, computer language itself is constantly changing. Even if you have enough experience, you might not be able to beat a newbie. You don't have to make fun of me for being old. Yin Shixiang deliberately glared at her. He was secretly very happy. He had a feeling that Gu Nianji might have accidentally solved a problem that He Xiaoheng and the others hadn't been able to solve. What do you want me to do? Yin Shixiang sat down on Gu Nianji's soft computer chair. Gu Nianji pointed at the screen. Brother Xiong, contact Uncle Hua and the others. Don't use instant messaging, use email instead. Use encrypted email and local Wi-Fi. Send it to them and tell them to cut off all communication with the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System. Since the Nandu system had already been hacked, it was actually safer to use the local network. It was like having a house at home, but the roof was broken and full of holes. It was better to go to the neighbor's house to hide from the rain. Yin Shixiang nodded. I'll send it right away. He used Gu Nianji's computer to send an email to Zhao Liangzi. It was 7 in the morning in Vienna, Austria when the email arrived. He Xiaoheng and the others were used to waking up early and couldn't sleep. Zhao Liangzi went to the kitchen to make coffee and called room service for breakfast. He Xiaoheng stood alone by the window and smoked. Suddenly Zhao Liangzi's computer beeped. It was the sound of a special email arriving. He Xiaoheng flicked the ash off his cigarette and walked over to Zhao Liangzi's computer with a cigarette in his hand. Seeing that it was an email from Yin Shixiang, he thought for a moment and opened it. He immediately threw away the cigarette butt in his hand and said in a low voice, Little Zay, are you still connected to the Nandu system? Zhao Liangzi poked his head out of the kitchen. It's connected, but it hasn't been opened. It was like the router was on, but the computer was not turned on. He Xiaoheng sighed softly. His fingers tapped repeatedly on the keyboard to shut down all connections between their systems and the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System. Contact Yin Shixiang and the others. Use the hotel's Wi-Fi. He Xiaoheng stepped aside and called Zhao Liangzi over. Ask them what's going on. Zhao Liangzi rushed over and glanced at Yin Shixiang's email. His face paled. How is this possible? How could something happen to the Nandu? Anyone who had been involved in the design of the Nandu system and understood the Nandu system would not believe this. Although He Xiaoheng was shocked as well, he had always maintained his composure. No one could see the change in his emotions. He only nodded slightly. If even you didn't think something would happen to the Nandu system, then something must have happened to it. That was the only explanation for why they had been at a loss for so many days. The Imperial Army had already initiated a top-secret investigation to find the spy who might have leaked the information. However, a week had passed and they still had no leads. If they couldn't take care of the remaining 4 mercenaries in 2 weeks, their deal with Gu Yanran would not be valid. The 6th military region would fail its mission. He Xiaoheng would never allow such a failure to happen to the 6th military region, which had just been established. Zhao Liangzi checked all the systems and devices again to make sure there were no traces of a connection to the Nandu system. He turned on his computer and connected to the hotel's network. Soon Yin Shixiang's computer beeped. Zhao Liangzi and the others were greeting him. Yin Shixiang heard it and returned to his room with Gu Nianji's computer. Gu Nianji followed him in. Yin Shixiang set Gu Nianji's laptop aside and sat at his desk. He turned on his computer and opened the instant messaging app that was calling out to him. Zhao Liangzi's handsome face appeared on the computer screen. Big Xiong, I just got your email. Hey, Nianji isn't asleep either? Zhao Liangzi saw Gu Nianji's small face on the screen. In the dark room, the light from the computer screen shone on her delicate features. Her palm-sized face was as clear as a painting. Brother Zay, I have something to tell you. Gu Nianji's expression was very serious, her face tense. Is Uncle Hua here? Yes, speak. He Xiaoheng appeared behind Zhao Liangzi with his arms crossed. Gu Nianji composed herself and explained the small program and experiment she had done. She then held her laptop up to the camera. Look, the signal reflected back to my receiver is much stronger than the one I sent out. Zhao Liangzi was a true professional. He only took a few glances before slamming his hand on the computer desk. Something's wrong. Who's so bold? Who's so good at this? So, the location that's also sending out signals to the Nanda system shouldn't be far from where you live, right? Can you find out? Xiaoheng immediately saw through the authenticity of the signals and asked questions that hit the nail on the head. Gun Yanji nodded. I think so too, but Brother Xiong and I still don't know exactly where it is. I know where it is. Yin Shixiang suddenly had an epiphany and thought of a place. He had pretended to be a tourist and visited the place not long ago. Where? Zhao Liangzi and Gun Yanji asked in unison. Harvard University School of Electrical Engineering. Yin Shixiang enunciated each word. If there's a place nearby that's conducting this kind of detection activity, it's the only place that has the necessary equipment and people. That's very possible. Gun Yanji whispered. Harvard University School of Electrical Engineering is right across from the law school. How about I go there tomorrow morning and see what's going on? Both Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang disagreed. No, you don't understand this kind of thing. Let Big Xiong go. Hua Xiaoheng took the mouse and opened a few programs. He said to Gun Yanji, Nianji, go take a look at the School of Electrical Engineering. Don't bring any equipment. Go see who's there and find out what kind of projects they have. Remember not to attract attention. This was the first time Hua Xiaoheng had asked Gun Yanji to do something so serious. She was very excited and nodded quickly. Okay, I'll be there tomorrow. Remember to be careful. Be quick. Hua Xiaoheng looked at his watch. I'll only give you 24 hours. By this time tomorrow you want results. Is that okay? Gun Yanji gritted her teeth. No problem. After the video call ended, Zhao Liangzi said to Hua Xiaoheng with some dissatisfaction. Mr. Hua, Nianji isn't a member of the Special Operations Forces. It's too dangerous for her to do something like this. Hua Xiaoheng toyed with a long cigarette in his hand and said expressionlessly, It's fine. It'll be more dangerous for Big Xiong. Gun Yanji was an exchange student at Harvard and a young girl. If there was a problem with the School of Electrical Engineering, Gun Yanji would be able to find out more easily than Yin Shixiang. This was the first update. There would be a second update in an hour. Monthly votes of 2,400 plus updates. Then there would be a third update. It was the end of the month. Please recommend votes and monthly votes. Your monthly votes will be invalid if you don't vote. Hurry up and vote. Chapter 122. Gun Yanji returned to her room, still very excited. However, she was still young, so she tossed and turned on the bed for a while before falling into a deep sleep. The next day, she opened her eyes and got up as soon as her alarm clock rang. After washing up in a hurry and eating breakfast, she carried her laptop out of the house. She actually didn't have any classes that morning, but in order to find an excuse to go to the School of Electrical Engineering opposite the law school, she still went to the small classroom to study. By 8 or 9 o'clock, there were more and more students and professors on campus, and the campus that had been quiet all night was alive again. Gun Yanji had already made all the plans. She used the school's intranet to search for the School of Electrical Engineering's webpage and found all the laboratories in the School of Electrical Engineering, as well as their instructors, research directions, and the master's and doctoral students they were recruiting. Gun Yanji's eyes quickly scanned through the list and found one group that was rather unusual. The specific research direction of this group was confidential, and there was no trace of it on the intranet. However, the list of participating members was listed. Judging from the titles of those people, the people participating were either postdoctorates, associate professors, or even professors. However, the leader of the group was a PhD student who had just arrived at Harvard University. He hadn't even taken the PhD qualification exam yet, but he was already the leader of this group. Gun Yanji's eyes stopped on the photo of the leader. The photo was of a young woman from the Wuxia Empire. She had graduated from the prestigious T University's Precision Instruments Department and had come to Harvard 2 years ago to study as a doctoral student. Her name was Xian Xingao. With such qualifications, she had come to study at the world-renowned top university, and was leading members who were much more experienced than her. Moreover, she was in a secret group. Gun Yanji's face broke into a smile. She felt that she didn't need to explore the School of Electrical Engineering to find the right direction. She only did 2 things. The first was to find the Wuxia Imperial Student Union's webpage at Harvard University and look up their calendar of events. Because it was the summer vacation, there weren't many students in school, but there were many student union events. Just that afternoon, the Wuxia Imperial Student Union had a networking event. Gu Nianji saw that one of the organizers was a postdoctoral student from the School of Electrical Engineering. I'd like to see this event. The smile on Gu Nianji's face widened as she saved the page. The second thing she did was save Xian Xinggao's resume from the School of Electronic Engineering and send it to Yin Shixiang. She instructed him to contact the Imperial Special Operations Forces and have them investigate this young student's field of study at T University, her research experience, and her family background and social connections. It would be easy for the Special Operations Forces to investigate the second matter. Before the Wuxia Imperial Student Union event in the afternoon, the Imperial Special Operations Forces had finished investigating Xian Xinggao's entire resume and sent the results to Yin Shixiang. When Yin Shixiang contacted the Wuxia Empire, he had specifically reminded them not to use the Nandu system to transfer documents. Therefore, this material was successfully sent to Yin Shixiang's mailbox. As soon as he finished reading the materials, he sucked in a breath of cold air. Nianji, where did you find this person's information? Yin Shixiang called Gu Nianji. Don't be too rash and don't listen to Wuxiao. He's always been strict and you're not a professional so you don't have to. Gu Nianji was displeased and rudely interrupted Yin Shixiang. Brother Xiong, what do you mean by that? I may not be as good as you guys but I'm not completely useless. Even Uncle Hua trusts me and entrusted me with important responsibilities, and you're still looking down on me? Yin Shixiang laughed bitterly. How would I dare look down on you? Nianji, I'm just worried about your safety. I know. Gu Nianji chuckled. Smart people use their brains, not their guts, to solve problems. Alright, I'm hanging up. I have a party this afternoon. Gu Nianji had just turned off her phone when she looked up to see He Zhichu leaning against the door of the small classroom. He was wearing a smoky gray iron-free Egyptian cotton shirt with his sleeves rolled up. His long, straight legs were tucked into a pair of light gray trousers. He looked down at her quietly, his shimmering, sultry eyes rippling with warmth, but his tall nose and tightly pursed lips made him appear extremely cold and aloof. His enigmatic, contradictory temperament had mesmerized countless women. Professor He, when did you get here? Gu Nianji calmly looked at her watch. You don't have classes today? Am I seeing things? What kind of party are you going to? He Zhichu asked dryly. Are you that free? Gu Nianji. Couldn't she even go to a student council event? Normally, Gu Nianji wouldn't go, since she wasn't a big fan of group activities. But this time she had a reason she had to go. It's a party for our National Student Council. I'm new here so I need to get to know my classmates. Gu Nianji smiled sweetly as she put away her laptop and put it in her backpack. She got up and walked past He Zhichu. Professor He, are you here for work? Where? He Zhichu's eyes followed her as she moved. Where is what? A party. Gu Nianji looked down at her phone. She had entered the address into her phone. Oh, it's not far, just 3 blocks away. Gu Nianji looked at the map. I'll drive you there. He Zhichu turned to go downstairs. 3 blocks isn't that close. Gu Nianji actually wanted to take the opportunity to go to the School of Engineering across the street to look for someone. She had memorized the organizer's name and resume and planned to get closer. But if He Zhichu drove her there, she wouldn't be able to go to the School of Engineering. Gu Nianji blinked and caught up to He Zhichu. Professor He, that's our student's thing, why are you going? Can't I go and see? He Zhichu walked to his car without looking back and pressed the key in his hand to remotely open the car door. Gu Nianji looked at the low-key yet ostentatious Mercedes-Benz and felt like shit. She looked back at the School of Engineering across from the law school with every step inside as she got into He Zhichu's car. He Zhichu pulled over her seatbelt and asked dryly, why do you keep looking at the School of Engineering? There's a handsome guy there, he's a Prince Charming. Gu Nianji blurted out a string of excuses and even had a love-struck smile on her face. I saw him once on campus before and I can't forget him. He Zhichu silently turned his head away. He also felt like he had just ket up. He originally didn't want to participate in the student union party, he just wanted to send Gu Nianji on the way. But seeing Gu Nianji like this, he wanted to see who this Prince Charming that she couldn't forget was. The second monthly ticket was delivered at 2,400 plus updates. Then there was the third update. It was the end of the month, please recommend and monthly tickets. Dear friends, your monthly tickets will be invalid if you don't vote. Hurry up and vote. Thank heaven for the beggar's gift yesterday. Thank Zero Core Silver for the God of Wealth's gift yesterday. Chapter 123. He Zhichu drove Gu Nianji to the Wuxia Imperial Student Union building. He parked the car and actually followed her inside. Gu Nianji wanted He Zhichu to go back several times, but he rebuffed her nonchalantly. Gu Nianji had no choice but to pretend he didn't exist. She walked in and started chatting with the students inside. She was a young girl and extremely beautiful, so she became the center of attention as soon as she walked in. Coupled with her eloquence and cheerfulness, she quickly became familiar with the students. Gu Nianji looked around but didn't see the postdoc from the School of Electrical Engineering. "Hey, do you know where Zhao Quan is?" Gu Nianji asked one of the student union staff members quietly. "Zhao Quan? He was here just now. Did he go to the kitchen over there to grill chicken wings?" The staff member pointed to the room inside. Gu Nianji walked in without a word. He Jichu followed her unhurriedly and glanced at the kitchen door. He saw a boy half a head shorter than Gu Nianji turn around and ask the door, "Who's looking for me?" Gu Nianji's body stiffened. Damn it. The photo on the school's intranet was a lie. The postdoc in the photo was sitting down so she couldn't see his height. He was quite good-looking and quite upright. If he was taller he could be called a Prince Charming. But facing this Prince Charming, who was half a head shorter than her, Gu Nianji wanted to cry. She could almost hear He Jichu sneering behind her, but whatever, she had serious business here. Not to mention that this senior martial brother was just a little short. Even if he looked like Zhu Beiji, she would still call him Adonis without batting an eyelid. Because she wanted to get some information about their school from him? He Jichu was indeed sneering, but only in his mind. He didn't actually laugh. He glanced at Gu Nianji's Prince Charming and turned to leave. Gu Nianji sighed in relief when he left. She felt more comfortable with her Prince Charming. "Brother Zhao, you're a postdoc from the School of Electrical Engineering. That's amazing." Gu Nianji's eyes widened like those of a manga girl. Zhao Quan was flustered and didn't know what he was talking about. No, I'm just an ordinary scholar." Zhao Quan scrambled to grill a chicken wing for her. "Do you want some?" "Thank you, brother Zhao." Gu Nianji took the chicken wing and sniffed it. "Smells so good." Then he started to flatter Zhao Quan. "I've been biased towards subjects since I was young, so now I can only study liberal arts and law. I admire people who are good at science the most, like senior brother Zhao. Come to think of it, us girls really can't compare to boys in science." Gu Nianji couldn't help sighing. Zhao Quan was bewitched by her charm and hurriedly said, "Shimmy, don't belittle yourself. Many girls are also very good at science, even better than boys." "Really? I don't believe it. Senior brother Zhao must be lying to me." Gu Nianji blinked her large, watery eyes and placed a grilled chicken wing on Zhao Quan's plate. "Brother Zhao, here you go." Zhao Quan smiled as he took a bite of the chicken wing and pointed in the direction of the living room. "Why would I lie to you? Look, that girl over there, Xian Xinggao. She's the best student in our school. She hasn't even passed the PhD exam yet, but she's already leading the best surveying team in our school." "Oh? Really?" Gu Nianji's heart thumped. She hadn't expected Xian Xinggao to be here as well. Her trip had been worth it. Xian Xinggao was a gentle and delicate girl with shoulder-length hair. She wore casual clothes and held a glass of beer in her hand as she chatted with the president of the student council. Gu Nianji set down the plate of chicken wings and wiped her hands with a napkin. She handed Zhao Quan a bottle of beer. "Have some beer, senior brother. It goes well with grilled chicken wings and beer." Zhao Quan drank half the bottle in one gulp. "Of course it's true. You can check the school's intranet if you don't believe me. It's all public information." "Oh, then it's probably nothing special." Gu Nianji shrugged. "Maybe she's just lucky." "It's not luck. Did you know? Their surveying team isn't just any surveying team. They're measuring the channel encoding of satellite signals. Did you know that?" Gu Nianji pretended to be confused. She shook her head. "I don't know." "Oh my, why are you talking about this? That's horrible, I don't want to hear it." She giggled and pestered Zhao Quan to tell a few jokes. She saw a female classmate about the same height as Zhao Quan glaring at her. She finally stood up. "I'm going out to take a look. Senior brother Zhao, do you want to come with me?" Zhao Quan's assignment was to be in charge of the kitchen. He couldn't possibly leave. Gu Nianji had already asked around. As expected, Zhao Quan said reluctantly, "I can't go out. Little sister, you go play by yourself." Gu Nianji skipped out and greeted her classmates in the living room. She giggled as she spun around the house before leaving. She looked around when she came out of the building but didn't see He Jichu's Mercedes. She guessed he had already left. However, when Gu Nianji left the main entrance and turned onto the street, she saw He Jichu's Mercedes slowly drive over and stop beside her. "Get in." He Jichu lowered the window and looked at her. Gu Nianji pursed her lips and clutched her backpack guiltily. She sat in the passenger seat next to He Jichu. Where else would I go to find a Prince Charming? Hijichu's tone had a hint of a smile as he looked at Gunyenji teasingly. Gunyenji's head was almost buried in the backpack she was hugging. She muttered, "How can there be so many Prince Charming? It's already good enough to find one today." Hijichu didn't want to talk anymore. He kept a straight face as he drove her back to her apartment at lightning speed. "Since you're so free, I'll send you a document later. It's a new case we accepted. Write up the preliminary report." Gunyenji got out of the car. Hijichu didn't even look at her as he gave her the assignment. He slammed on the gas pedal and the Mercedes sped up and sped away. Gunyenji covered her mouth and coughed a few times before turning to return to her apartment. As soon as she entered, Yin Shixiang pulled her to his room. "Quick, it's a video call from Huoxiao." Gunyenji perked up and quickly sat on Yin Shixiang's soft computer chair. "Uncle Hua." "Yeah." Huoxiaoheng's expression was much better. "Yenji, you did great this time." "Thank you for the compliment, Uncle Hua. Is there anything else I can help with?" Gunyenji wanted nothing more than to pat her chest and promise that she was very capable. A smile flashed across Huoxiaoheng's lips. "No need. Tonight, you and little Zay will work together to intercept the probe signal. We'll see what they're up to." "No problem." Gunyenji was already prepared. Huoxiaoheng's suggestion coincided with her own. The signal had appeared at midnight last night. They would probably have to wait until around this time. Gunyenji didn't have time to work on the case. She slept first and woke up at midnight. She connected to Zhao Liangzi and had him control her laptop to begin tracking the probe signal. An entire night passed. Zhao Liangzi and Gunyenji went through detailed calculations and continuous tests before finally confirming the other party's intentions. This result was both within their expectations and beyond their expectations. The signal from the School of Electronic Engineering was just as Zhao Quan had said. They were continuously probing the channel password of the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System. Judging from Huoxiaoheng's previous failures, the team from Harvard University School of Electronic Engineering must have cracked part of the Nandu system's pseudo-random password. That was why they were able to track people using the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System overseas. It was the third watch. It was the end of the month. They needed recommendation votes and monthly votes. Their monthly votes would be invalid if they didn't vote. Hurry up and vote. Chapter 124. This Xian Xingao is really something. Gunyenji was impressed. It's not easy to crack the Nandu system's channel code. I'd be impressed too if she could crack the code from scratch. Yin Shixiang shook his head. Unfortunately, she can't. Gunyenji could tell that Yin Shixiang was implying something. "Brother Xiong, did you find out something?" "Yes." Yin Shixiang sent the information on Xian Xingao to Zhao Liangzi. "Take a look for yourselves." Xian Xingao participated in the research and development of the Nanda system with her instructor at T University when she was in the Huaxia Empire. Although she didn't participate in the core parts, she was able to understand the basic processes and general framework as well as the coding rules. In addition, our Nandu system uses the same coding rules as the European Copernicus system for compatibility purposes. Zhao Liangzi added. "As far as I know, this lab at Harvard University School of Electronic Engineering cracked the European Copernicus system's channel code 6 months ago. With this as a foundation, and now that they've cracked the Nandu system's code, it's not surprising that they were able to figure out the Nandu system's pseudo-random code." Gunyenji patted her chest in relief. That's good. I was really worried that she was a genius student." "Genius my ass. She's just a porter." Yin Shixiang pulled up the MATLAB software on his computer. Here they send detection signals to the Nandu system every day. Once the signals are received, they import the data into MATLAB for calculation. From the looks of it, they should be able to crack it soon. Gunyenji estimated the amount of data and MATLAB's computing power. Her delicate little face was serious. "Uncle Hua, you absolutely cannot use the Nandu system again." Huoxiaoheng sat in front of the computer, holding the mouse with one hand and resting the other on the back of the computer chair. His posture was much more relaxed. "Yenji, I really have to thank you this time." His voice came from the computer's microphone. It was deep and magnetic, and it went directly into Gunyenji's ears and into the bottom of her heart. Her ears were numb, and she couldn't help pinching her earlobe to soothe the numbness. She smiled and said, "Uncle Hua, I'm happy to be able to help you." She then asked, "Should we notify the Empire to change the channel password for the Nandu Empire? Will it be a huge loss?" On the other side, Zhao Liangzi said angrily, "The biggest loss was our operation this time. We were careless and fell into someone else's trap. Apart from that, it didn't matter much. This was because the Nanda system's civilian code had always been free for everyone to use. But whether I voluntarily let you use it or whether you stole my password and used it are two different things. Gunyanji snapped her fingers. Understood. Isn't it the same as our next-door neighbor cracking our Wi-Fi password and secretly using our network? That sounded like a good analogy. Zhao Yangze and Yin Shixiang laughed at the same time. That's right. This was the principle. The unscrupulous neighbor is tapping on our Wi-Fi. That's so low. Gunyanji laughed as well. She actually understood what Zhao Yangze hadn't said, otherwise he wouldn't have been so angry. Although Xian Xinggao's American team had cracked the civilian code still had some rules to it. If the Americans hadn't discovered the Wuxia Empire's password rules in time, there would have been no end of trouble. Therefore this blow was not a small one. This can be a big deal. Hu Xiaoheng didn't laugh with them. He pointed at the data analysis on the computer. They definitely won't be able to crack the Nanda system's military code, because I was the one who created it. Of course, if there's a leak like this, even the most complicated code can be cracked. Zhao Yangze and Yin Shixiang nodded. This time, the civilian code was cracked because of a leak. If Xian Xinggao's team wanted to take credit for cracking the code, Yin Shixiang would be the first to object. Did she ask her father for permission? Did she ask her mentor for permission? This information shows that Xian Xinggao's father was the director of the Imperial H Province Police Department. That's why she was able to join the Nanda system even though she was only a junior undergraduate. Yin Shixiang pointed at the results of the Special Operations Force's investigation. Wu Xiaoheng looked at him through the camera. I've already ordered the Special Task Force of the 6th Military Region to investigate the overseas connections of all the people involved in the Nanda system's development. As for Xian Xinggao's father, he's no longer fit to be the director of the Provincial Police Department. Hu Xiaoheng issued an order back home. The military will investigate him and remove him from office on the spot. That problem was solved, but a new one arose. Without the Nanda system's support, Hu Xiaoheng and his team's operations were many times more difficult. They still had 4 targets that needed to be eliminated. But they had no leads. Without the Nanda system's guidance and location, they were deaf and blind. Zhao Yangze and Yin Shixiang were distressed. Hu Xiaoheng couldn't help but smoke another cigarette. Gunyanji saw it and whispered, "Brother Zhe, get Uncle Hua a cup of coffee. Try not to smoke as much as possible." Hu Xiaoheng looked at Gunyanji's cautious expression on the computer screen. He tapped the table with the cigarette between his fingers and lit it. He pretended not to hear Gunyanji and calmly took a drag, exhaling a faint white ring of smoke. Gunyanji pouted. It looked like Uncle Hua wouldn't listen to her. She shifted her gaze to Zhao Yangze. "Brother Zhe, what about your mission? That's what's bothering us. If it doesn't work out, we'll have to do it ourselves." Zhao Yangze ran his fingers through his hair in frustration. He hadn't had a good rest for the past few days. His eyes were dark and his chin was dotted with dark stubble. Gunyanji had been thinking about this problem ever since she learned that the Nanda system had been hacked. Now that she understood the Nanda system's development process and coding rules, she had a bold idea. "Uncle Hua, Brother Zhe, how about this?" Gunyanji coughed lightly to get their attention. "We can't use the Nanda system because we don't want to be tracked by the Americans. But what if we use the European Copernicus satellite navigation system?" The European Copernicus satellite navigation system had been developed earlier than the Wuxia Empire's Nandu system. However, due to various reasons, it had only been built for European use. It didn't cover the entire planet like the Nandu system. However, Hu Xiaoheng's mission was to be carried out in Europe, so they only needed a navigation system that covered Europe. Use the Copernicus system? Zhao Yangze looked up abruptly. Good idea. But we have to crack the Copernicus code first. Then we can hack into it like the Americans did to our Nanda system. We can use their system. Crack the Copernicus code? Do you have the time? Yin Shixiang sneered. The Harvard team took almost half a year to crack it, and that was under the leadership of a traitor. Do we have that much time? Zhao Yangze was stumped by the question. Gunyanji looked at Yin Shixiang's solemn expression, then at the crestfallen Zhao Yangze, and finally at the expressionless Hu Xiaoheng. She raised her hand timidly. Let me try. I should be able to crack the Copernicus system's civilian code in a day and a night. This was the first update. There would be a second update in an hour. Monthly votes of 2,500 plus updates. Then there would be a third update. It was the end of the month. Please recommend votes and monthly votes. Dear friends, your monthly votes are invalid if you don't vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Underscore important things must be repeated 3 times. Oh, intersection underscore intersection. Oh. Chapter 125. You can solve it in one day? Zhao Yangzi and Yin Shixiang shouted at the same time. Ever since the United States announced that they had cracked the channel code of the Copernicus system, Europe has changed the original code. If you want to crack it again, is one day and one night really enough? Cracking this kind of password required a computer with powerful computing power. In order to crack the channel password of the Nandu system, Harvard University School of Electronic Engineering had used a supercomputer to run around the clock. If she used Gu Nianji's little laptop, she probably wouldn't be able to calculate it even if she worked until the end of time. Hua Xiaoheng also looked up from the other end of the computer. His deep, dark eyes stared fixedly at her. Although they were separated by a computer screen, it was as if he could see through her heart. Gu Nianji couldn't breathe under his intense stare. She lowered her eyes and didn't dare to meet his gaze again. She whispered, I remember classmate Xian's website had the original signal record of the Copernicus system. Although there seemed to be a lot of data, there was actually a lot of clutter. If messy signals could be eliminated, the amount of data would be greatly reduced, and the computing power required would be correspondingly reduced. My computer. She looked up at Zhao Yangzi in the corner of the screen and smiled. Was modified by Brother Zhe. Although it can't compare to a real supercomputer, it's much more powerful than a normal computer. Hua Xiaoheng turned to look at Zhao Yangzi, who was sitting next to him. You modified Nianji's computer? Why didn't I know about this? Zhao Yangzi wanted nothing more than to shut her up. Didn't you promise not to let Hua Xiaoheng know? This little immoral fellow. He had long known that little Nianji didn't have any backbone in front of Major General Hua. Not only did she confess many things without being forced, but she also confessed without being asked. This little girl was really afraid of Hua Xiao to the core. Zhao Yangzi silently cursed Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng as he put on a blank expression and shook his head. I don't know, Yin Shixiang saw this from the other side and secretly cursed Zhao Yangzi for playing dumb. How could Hua Xiao let him go? As expected, Hua Xiaoheng looked at him coldly and stood up. Then you will accompany Nianji to crack the password. You're not allowed to sleep, he said as he walked out. Zhao Yangzi quickly replied, Yes, sir. Then he made a face at Gu Nianji. Little Nianji, you betrayed Brother Zhe. Ha ha ha. Seeing that Hua Xiaoheng had left, Gu Nianji immediately perked up and made a face at Zhao Yangzi. So what if I betrayed him? I'll tell you everything I know in front of Uncle Hua. Brother Zhe, you should have known better. Zhao Yangzi was speechless at Gu Nianji's adorable, shameless expression. Forget it, forget it. I'm a great man who doesn't stoop to petty things. Come, tell me what you plan to do. Zhao Yangzi smiled and shook his head. He had to get down to business and solve this problem as soon as possible. Gu Nianji's eyes instantly lit up. She briefly explained the measures she had thought of and even showed Zhao Yangzi a diagram. Brother Zhe, I've carefully studied their decoding process. I think the biggest problem isn't in the calculations, but in how to eliminate signal impurities. The signal retrieved from the outer guard planets thousands of miles in the sky would receive all kinds of interference. The process of deciphering the channel code was actually a process of eliminating interference, capturing useful signals, and then restoring the code in a predetermined order. There were many ways to achieve this goal. Xian Xinggao's team's method was actually to rely on a supercomputer and an insider to lead the way. They had to forcefully use supercomputing to find the rules of the channel code. Gu Nianji didn't have a supercomputer, and even if she did, their time wouldn't allow it. Therefore, in order to quickly and efficiently decipher the code, Gu Nianji's first idea was to comb through the signal. The first step was to eliminate the interference impurities. That way, the amount of data left would be greatly reduced, and the calculation process would be greatly shortened. There were 3 steps in satellite transmission: the source code, the encryption code, and the channel code. The deciphering process was to do the exact opposite and start with the channel code. Xian Xinggao's team had only accomplished the most peripheral step from beginning to end, which was to decipher the channel code. Gu Nianji's little program eliminated the background noise in advance and filtered out the useful signal code. Zhao Yangzi's eyes widened. He couldn't help but slap the table in praise. Great idea. It was a good idea to take a different approach. How do you plan to remove the interference from the Copernicus signal? Gu Nianji pulled up the little program she had written yesterday. Brother Zhe, take a look at this. Can it achieve the goal I just mentioned? Zhao Liangzi took control of Gu Nianji's computer and directly opened the little program to look through it. As he looked through it, he optimized some areas for her. However, he didn't make any changes to the overall structure of the software. He couldn't help praising her. Nianji, don't study law. Come learn computer science from Brother Zhe. I promise you'll become the greatest hacker in the world. You'll surpass your master and become someone who can step on the shoulders of a giant like Brother Zhe. Gu Nianji pouted. You really know how to flatter yourself. Okay, stop talking and let's get started. Okay, did you save the data? Enter it into the computer. Go. Zhao Liangzi turned on his computer and began sending signals to the Copernicus system to intercept the latest signal information. The two of them worked in front of the computer for an entire day and night. They only nibbled on bread when they ate and drank some water when they were thirsty. Other than going to the bathroom, the two of them never left the computer desk. Of course, they didn't sleep either. Because of Zhao Liangzi's help, Gu Nianji didn't even need 24 hours. She only needed 20 hours to crack the Copernicus system's latest channel password and the second layer of encryption. Not only was she many times faster than the American team, but she also went further than them. After cracking the encryption, Zhao Liangzi and the others could use the Copernicus system without fear of being discovered by the people who maintain the Copernicus system. Hua Xiaoheng came back from his morning exercise and heard that the password had been cracked. He patted Zhao Liangzi's shoulder. Go to sleep. We'll move out tonight. Zhao Liangzi immediately stood up. His legs floated in the air as he made his way to his bed. He fell into a deep sleep. He and Gu Nianji had been working under intense conditions for the past 20 hours. It was already very difficult for them to endure it. Hua Xiaoheng looked at Gu Nianji in the video. His voice was much gentler. Nianji, you should go to sleep too. He paused, then asked quietly, Are you tired? Not at all. I'm not tired at all. Gu Nianji was so excited by Hua Xiaoheng's concern. I still have something to do. Uncle Hua, just you wait. I'll avenge you. Hua Xiaoheng's lips curved slightly. He shook his head. Be a good girl. He looked at Gu Nianji silently. His cold, heart-stopping eyes were filled with a hint of tenderness that even he didn't notice. Gu Nianji was intoxicated by his gaze. It was almost like hypnosis. Her eyelids drooped and she fell asleep on the computer desk. Yin Shixiang clicked his tongue and carried Gu Nianji to her bedroom. Hua Xiaoheng watched from the video. He pursed his lips imperceptibly and clicked off the video. Out of sight, out of mind. This was the second monthly pass of 2,500 plus passes. Then there was the third pass. It was the end of the month. Please recommend votes and monthly votes. Our monthly votes are invalid if we don't vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Underscore important things must be repeated 3 times. Chapter 126. Zhao Liangzi finally woke up at 5 o'clock in the evening in Vienna, Austria. He had gone to bed at 2 in the morning and had slept for a full 15 hours. When he woke up, he was starving. Hua Xiaoheng had already ordered food to be delivered to his room. He climbed out of bed and wolfed down the food with his hands. He didn't even need a knife and fork. Hua Xiaoheng stood alone on the balcony and smoked. His mind was blank and he couldn't think of anything. 2 members of Team A had injured legs and couldn't continue with the mission. Hua Xiaoheng planned to do it himself. The members of Team B and Team C were ready to go. Zhao Liangzi finished his meal and put on his clothes. He walked out and said to Hua Xiaoheng's imposing figure, Mr. Hua, can we begin? Hua Xiaoheng didn't turn around. He only nodded. Begin. Zhao Liangzi turned on his computer and began connecting to the European Copernicus satellite navigation system. He had already cracked the password and hacked in layer by layer. Finally, he created an encrypted channel for his team to direct the mission. The 3 men from Vienna had already alerted the enemy. They didn't know where they were now. That was when the powerful and omnipotent social media came into play. It took Zhao Liangzi only a minute to hack the famous social media app, Must Die, and lock onto the social media accounts of the 3 mercenaries who originally lived in Vienna. Modern people couldn't live without social media. Even though they were mercenaries, they liked to pop up from time to time and post what they thought were beautiful selfies. Within half an hour, Zhao Liangzi had monitored the status updates of the 3 mercenaries. From the internal data display of Must Die, he found the IP addresses of the 3 men when they posted their status updates. With the IP addresses and the Copernicus system, the 3 men were fish in the net. Zhao Liangzi checked and snorted. It seemed that the Whitewater Security Group was very confident. They were certain that the Huaxia Empire's Nandu system had been hacked and wouldn't pursue them anymore. Was that why they didn't even change locations? Team B, target B locked. Location, Vienna State Opera House East, 3 o'clock, 300 meters. Copy that, report over. Team C, target C locked. Location, Vienna Parliament Building West, 9 o'clock, 100 meters. C, Roger, report over. Zhao Liangzi sent a final message to Hua Xiaoheng. Team A, target A locked in. North of Vienna's Medellin Cemetery, 11 o'clock, visual estimate of 50 meters. Zhao Liangzi was on a mission with Hua Xiaoheng, so he was Hua Xiaoheng's spotter. Hua Xiaoheng held a Barrett M82A2 sniper rifle and stood behind a stone wall not far from the cemetery. He aimed at the Caucasian man who was placing flowers on a tombstone in front of him for a long time. It was already evening and the street lights in the cemetery were lit up. In order to prevent the reflection of the sniper rifle's scope from attracting the enemy's attention, Hua Xiaoheng had already removed the scope. He only relied on his naked eye and the front sight to aim in 3 points in a line. This time the 3 teams were going to do the same thing they did in the Czech Republic. He would kill all 3 of them at the same time, then move on to Luxembourg and kill the last one. They had to act quickly. They had to end the battle before the enemy realized who their target was. Otherwise, the last person might disappear without a trace. Wind speed 0. 1 meters per second, wind direction northwest, humidity 40%, light fog, visibility average. Report over. Zhao Liangzi reported the weather conditions to Hua Xiaoheng. Snipers needed to be extremely accurate, so they had to consider the wind direction, wind speed, sunlight, rain, and other weather conditions. One mistake and they would miss the target. Hua Xiaoheng nodded and ordered, "Move in 3 minutes." Zhao Liangzi hurriedly reported to the other team members, "Move in 3 minutes." Roger. Roger. 3 minutes later, at almost the same time, muffled gunshots rang out in 3 different places in Vienna, the capital of Austria. The gunshots were muffled and were so quick that almost no one could tell what had happened. In the cemetery, a lone man who was offering flowers to a tombstone suddenly had blood spurt out from the center of his forehead. A sniper bullet had hit his forehead, causing his brain to splatter. He didn't make a sound and reflexively tossed his hands up. The flowers in his hands flew into the air and floated back down to cover his wide-eyed corpse. On the east side of the Vienna Opera House, a tall, burly man was taking a selfie with his phone. Before he could smile, he found a round black hole in his forehead. Crack. The phone fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. He fell backward onto the ground with a thud, twitched twice, and breathed his last. In front of the historic Vienna Parliament building, many homeless people gathered. It looked very crowded, but in fact no one cared about anyone else. A man in hunting gear was about to turn into an alley. A sniper bullet flew out from the darkness without a sound and hit him in the back, then passed through his chest and directly shattered his heart. The man fell forward to the ground, his hands convulsing as he grabbed a handful of fallen leaves. The homeless people around him looked at him indifferently, thinking he was a drug addict. No one cared about what had happened to him. "Mr. Hua, all 3 targets have been eliminated. End of report." Zhao Liangzi happily put away his equipment. Hua Xiaoheng also put away his gun and put it in his gun case. Putting on his sunglasses, he said, "Let's go to Luxembourg." They drove straight from Vienna to Luxembourg without stopping for even a moment. Luxembourg was a small duchy. Although it was called a country, it was actually a city disguised as one. The person they wanted to kill was actually more cautious and had already changed his residence several times. This time, Zhao Liangzi had the help of the European Copernicus system. He found the person's phone number and used the Copernicus system to locate the person's hiding place. This was the last one and it was a surprise. They didn't send out snipers again. Instead, they sneaked into the cellar where he was hiding, blocked the door and burned him to death. When the last target was killed, the deaths of the other 3 targets in Vienna had not yet been discovered. "Alright, inform Big Xiong that we're done here. We're going to London immediately." Hua Xiaoheng made the decision to go to London for the International Telecommunications Conference. Before news of the Nandu system's password being cracked spread, they had to be the first to destroy the enemy's plans. Zhao Liangzi immediately notified Yin Shixiang and sent a message to Gu Nianji. When Gu Nianji received the message, she was writing a report in He Zhichu's office at Harvard Law School. "Mission accomplished? That's great." Gu Nianji's eyes flashed. She quietly opened her program and connected to Harvard's intranet. She hacked into Xian Xinggao's work computer at the School of Engineering and sent a hidden interference command to not only the European Copernicus satellite navigation system, but also the American GPS system. The interference command entered the two navigation systems and lay dormant. When the time came, Gunyenji's command would immediately cause an explosive impact on the planet's global communications. It was the third watch. It was the end of the month. Asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Our monthly votes will be invalid if we don't vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Important things must be repeated 3 times. Oh, and oh. Chapter 127. The London International Telecommunications Conference? Gunyenji looked at Zhao Liang's message and opened the search engine. It's actually in 2 days. She propped up her head and clicked the mouse lightly to check the agenda for the London International Telecommunications Conference. Then she sent a message to Zhao Liangza. After the conference starts, contact me. I have a big gift for you. What gift? Gunyenji briefly explained her plan. Zhao Liangza was a professional, so he was so excited that he almost licked his lips. Thank you, Nyenji. You're too amazing. Hurry up and send me the program. I'll teach them a lesson. Hua Xiaoheng and the others arrived in London and rested for a while before contacting the Huaxia delegation for the International Telecommunications Conference. The head of the delegation was a deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the surname Yan. After an hour of private discussion with Hua Xiaoheng, he sent an urgent report to the empire. At 5 o'clock in the morning on the day of the International Telecommunications Conference, Hua Xiaoheng finally received a reply from the Huaxia Empire asking him to follow Major General Hua's arrangements. Of course, Major General Hua's name was in code, and he didn't specify who it was. Deputy Minister Yan immediately informed all the members of the delegation that there had been a change in plans and that they would be under special orders from the Imperial Army today. Hua Xiaoheng didn't show up directly. Instead, he let Zhao Liangza and Little Su from Team B coordinate. Find someone with a silver tongue and prepare to speak at the conference today. Focus on the commercial value of the Nandu system. Hua Xiaoheng gave the order directly to Deputy Minister Yan. For the sake of confidentiality, only he and Zhao Liangza knew the specific arrangements. At 6 o'clock in the morning in London, someone knocked on Hua Xiaoheng's hotel room. Zhao Liangza opened the door and saw a tall, fair-skinned beauty standing at the door. Reporting to Chief, First Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bai Shuang. The beauty stood up straight and nodded at Zhao Liangza with a smile. Bai Shuang's eyes were big, her nose was tall, and her lips were plump. She didn't look like an Asian. She was tall and she was wearing high heels. A light gray uniform dress suit made her figure stand out. Her chest was high, her waist was thin, and her buttocks were abnormally plump. Zhao Liangza's eyes flashed. This woman probably had some Caucasian blood in her. He opened the door and stepped aside to let Bai Shuang in. Secretary Bai, are you from H province? Come in, the bureau chief is inside. I'm his secretary. Most of the people in H province were of Caucasian descent. Bai Shuang's eyes widened in surprise, and her already big eyes widened even more. How did you know I'm from H province? May I know your surname? My surname is Zhao. Zhao Liangza led her to Hua Xiaoheng's room and knocked on the door. Chief, Secretary Bai Shuang of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is here. Hua Xiaoheng opened the door and walked out. He glanced at Bai Shuang. Did Deputy Minister Yan tell you? Yes, Chief. What can I do for you? Bai Shuang respectfully asked. The meeting will begin at 9 o'clock. Deputy Minister Yan said that the situation has changed. May I ask what I should do? That's none of your business. You need to be very familiar with the Nandu system. At 9 o'clock in the morning London time, the International Telecommunications Conference started on time. Communication and positioning system manufacturers from all over the world had come here. There were government and private companies. They were all here to find suitable products and understand the most cutting-edge technology development in the communication and positioning industry. This was the grandest and most high-end exchange venue in the global satellite communications industry. On the Blue Planet, there were not many countries that were qualified to provide global satellite positioning capabilities. The United States was the first, and the United European Union was the second. The third was the Huaxia Empire, which had attempted to cooperate with the European Union, but had been cheated out of a large sum of money by the European Union. The Huaxia Empire learned from this painful experience and decided not to have any illusions about other countries. Instead, it would rely entirely on its own strength to develop its own global satellite positioning system. This was the Nandu system. It had caught up and completely outperformed the European Union's Copernicus system and the United States GPS system in terms of technology, performance, and cost. However, because it was a latecomer, the international community had not yet recognized the technical capabilities and commercial value of the Nandu system. Zhao Liangzi followed the Wuxia delegation into the conference venue. Hu Xiaoheng was also beside Deputy Minister Yan of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His face had been slightly altered. He wore a pair of brown glasses and a casual khaki suit. He was serious and acted as if no one else was present. The conference was held at the Oriental Hotel in London. As soon as they entered, they were greeted by a giant LED screen that displayed the blue sky, white clouds, and the endless sea. Seagulls soared above the sea, splashing waves everywhere. Fishing sails dotted the surface of the sea. Sunlight shone through the gaps in the white clouds onto the boundless sea. The sea looked like it was covered in shards of gold, sparkling with life as the waves danced. In front of the screen was a semicircular podium. In front of the podium were rows of red soft chairs arranged in a staircase. The names of the delegations attending the conference were pasted on the back of each chair. The Wuxia Empire's delegation was seated in the first two rows in the middle. Zhao Liangzi followed Hu Xiaoheng and sat down. He turned on his phone and connected to Guanyenji. They were still using the encrypted channel of the Copernicus system. The maintainers of the European Union's Copernicus system still did not know that their system had been hacked. "Nianji, let me show you this magnificent venue." Zhao Liangzi chuckled as he raised his phone and circled the venue. There were many people taking pictures with their phones, so Zhao Liangzi's actions did not attract any attention. Guanyenji's eyes were fixed on Hu Xiaoheng, who sat motionless in the corner of the screen. From the angle Zhao Liangzi raised his phone, Guanyenji could only see part of Hu Xiaoheng's face. But it was only a quarter of his face, and it was enough for Guanyenji to not blink. "Did you see it?" Zhao Liangzi turned the phone around and looked down at Guanyenji. "Are you ready? We'll be watching the show soon." Guanyenji smiled and rested her chin on her hands as she looked at the camera. "I woke up early today just to watch the show. You can't disappoint me." She pointed at the screen and winked. "Brother Zay, I sent you something in your email. Remember to send it to the conference's official website before you start." At that moment, the blonde host, Jenny, announced the start of the conference. "Hello, distinguished guests. Today is the official opening day of our 18th International Telecommunications Conference." Jenny opened the curtains with a smile. Images began to appear on the large LED screen behind her. Planes flew into the sky one after another, their flight paths crisscrossing and drawing white lines in the sky. Fishing boats sailed on the vast ocean. Looking down from the sky, they were so small that they couldn't even be seen. On land, pedestrians were rushing around with their phones in hand. Some were making calls, some were swiping and typing on their phones. It's because of our Copernicus satellite navigation and positioning system and the American GPS navigation and positioning system that we can move freely around the world without fear of the unknown. As Jenny spoke, she turned to look at the large LED screen behind her. "Everyone please take a look. This is a fishing boat in the Atlantic Ocean. They've been sailing for 500 hours. Hello, can you hear me?" She was going to connect. At that moment, Zhao Liangzi quietly activated the interference software that Guanyenji had uploaded earlier. The interference software had already been imported into the Copernicus and GPS systems. It immediately blocked the local signal with lightning speed. The LED screen that was connecting suddenly burst with long and short colorful lines. The fishing boat on the screen was separated by many tiny symbols and could no longer be seen. "Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?" Jenny was extremely embarrassed. She immediately adjusted the earphone cable, but the conference's satellite connection was still cut off. This was the first update. There was going to be a second update soon. The 2,600 monthly votes would be added. And then there was the third update. "Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Important things must be repeated 3 times. Chapter 128. There was a buzzing sound below the rostrum, along with intermittent sneers. The conference was supposed to showcase the global satellite communication and navigation system, but they had lost track of a fishing boat that had been connected in advance. This was really a huge loss of face. The host of the conference saw that the situation was not good and immediately switched the image to another target. This was also predetermined to be on a research ship in the Arctic. However, this research ship was not as good as the fishing boat from before. There was not even a clear image and the connection was cut off. The team responsible for the technical aspects of the conference was flushed with anxiety. They typed all kinds of programs in front of the terminal, trying to establish a connection with the satellite, but it was as if there was a door blocking their way. They could not establish contact with the outside world at all. My God. What the hell happened? The Copernicus system is almost paralyzed. Use the American GPS system. The American GPS system is the most powerful. But it's too expensive. Who cares if it's expensive? You have to connect it even if it's sky high. The chairman of the conference was sweating profusely, his bald head glistening with sweat. However, after a long time they had just established a connection with the GPS system, but they immediately discovered that the GPS system also seemed to have a problem. For some reason the system was running extremely slowly, and the connection could not be established at all. The bad connection signal kept coming from the other side, which made them jump in anger. Jenny, who was standing on the podium in charge of explaining and marketing, was so embarrassed that she wanted to hide under the table. Hua Xiaoheng turned to look at Deputy Minister Yan. Deputy Minister Yan quickly nudged Bai Shuang, who was sitting next to him. Secretary Bai, it's your turn. Bai Shuang gritted her teeth. Will our Nanda system work? Even the Copernicus system and GPS system were not working. She really had no confidence in the Nanda system. Zhao Liangzi hurriedly uploaded the Nanda system's civilian code that Gun Yanji had asked him to upload in advance. He said impatiently to Bai Shuang, hurry up and tell them to switch to the Nanda system. It can help them contact these missing fishing boats and research ships. Go. This is an order. Bai Shuang did not dare to hesitate and quickly took the things Zhao Liangzi had given her and walked to the podium. She was an excellent staff member of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so she immediately became calm as soon as she reached the podium. She asked in a standard London accent, excuse me, Ms. Jenny, do you need my help? There's a problem with the satellite system. I don't know how this lady from the East can help us. Are you going to show us some Oriental magic to relieve our boredom? Jenny, who had blonde hair and blue eyes, said with obvious ill intentions. This obvious contempt completely infuriated Bai Shuang and all the members of the Chinese delegation. At that moment, everyone wished that their country was so powerful that these hypocritical Caucasians had no choice but to bow their heads and lick the boots of the Wuxia Empire, which they had once trampled under their feet. I don't know magic. Why don't you give us a belly dance while I'm connecting to your electronic system? Bai Shuang winked at her and flashed a big smile. She then handed the thing in her hand to the technical support of the conference. This is the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation and Positioning System developed by our country. It can help you quickly establish a connection with those missing fishing and scientific research ships. The technical support of the conference was desperate. Although they didn't have any hope for the Nandu system, which they had never heard of before, there was no harm in giving it a try, right? However, after establishing a connection, they were shocked to discover that the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation and Positioning System not only had a faster and more accurate connection, but it also had an instant communication function. This meant that not only could they send a message to locate the ship, but the people on the fishing boat could also send a message. Soon, the LED screen on the podium flashed twice, and the interrupted image reappeared. This time, the people on the fishing boat looked anxious, but quickly became extremely happy. They squealed and spoke in Spanish. After the conference's simultaneous interpretation, everyone knew that the fishermen were asking what had just happened and why all the navigation systems had suddenly stopped working. Bai Shuang took the opportunity to grab the microphone from Jenny's hand and explain the situation to the fishermen in fluent Spanish. Because the Copernicus system and the American GPS system have just malfunctioned, the conference will use the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation and Positioning System developed by the Wuxia Empire. This system is compatible with the Copernicus system, so you can use your Copernicus system receiver to receive the Nandu system's positioning and navigation. Remember, the password is... Bai Shuang suddenly slowed down and recited the Nandu system's civilian code word by word. The conference suddenly fell silent. Everyone stared in shock at Bai Shuang, who was reciting the password on the podium. Was this woman from the Wuxia Empire crazy? Did she know what she was doing? She had just revealed such a precious password to the world. At that moment, the American military, who had been paying attention to the International Telecommunications Conference in London, was also shocked. This is too cunning. We can't let the Wuxia Empire succeed. We have to announce that we've cracked the password in advance. At that moment, a team of experts working with the military from Harvard University's School of Electronic Engineering received an urgent call from the U.S. military. They had to quickly hold a global press conference to announce that the United States had cracked the channel code of the Wuxia Empire's Nandu Global Satellite Navigation and Positioning System. When the Americans wanted to announce something to the world, the media all over the world would follow the lead of the United States. Before Bai Shuang could finish introducing the Nandu system's password at the International Telecommunications Conference, the host, Jenny, received a notification. She suddenly rushed up and grabbed the microphone from Bai Shuang's hand. She said excitedly, "Dear guests, we have just received breaking news from the United States." As she spoke, she turned around and pointed to the large LED screen behind her. The image on the screen had already changed to the press conference of the satellite mapping team from Harvard University's School of Electronic Engineering. "Dear distinguished guests and friends of the press, we have just made a major breakthrough. I would like to announce to you that we have just cracked the channel code of the Wuxia Empire's Nandu Global Satellite Navigation and Positioning System." Clap, 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 clap. The sound of everyone clapping and cheering could be heard on the screen, as well as the sound of champagne bottles being opened. Colored stripes danced in the air, and countless confetti fluttered down. Bai Shuang was stunned. She stood next to Jenny, not knowing what to do. She regretted not explaining the password sooner. Jenny glanced at Bai Shuang proudly. She was overjoyed and thought to herself, "You stole my limelight. You've been slapped in the face, haven't you?" At that moment, Gun Yanji, who had been watching the entire process through Zhao Liangzi's phone, sneered. She had already prepared for this and had already asked Zhao Liangzi to upload the password in advance. Looking down, Gun Yanji quickly typed a few words to Zhao Liangzi. "Brother Zhe, pass it to the spokesperson on stage. Let everyone see who is the shameless one." Bai Shuang's phone rang. She looked down and couldn't help but sigh in relief. Looking up, she smiled and grabbed the microphone from Jenny's hand again. She recited the words on the phone without missing a single word. "It's really breaking news. Our delegation has already synchronized the Nandu system's channel code on the International Telecommunications Conference's website 15 minutes ago. The Americans announced that they had cracked all our passwords in 15 minutes, and now you're blaming me? I really shouldn't have released the passwords in advance. This was the second monthly vote of 2,600 plus one. And then there was the third one. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Underscore important things must be repeated 3 times. Chapter 129. The global manufacturers, scientists, and technicians who had been dumbfounded a moment ago couldn't help but roar with laughter. The Americans had been too careless this time. The password had been made public for 15 minutes, and they still had the gall to announce that they had cracked it. Even if it was really the one who deciphered it, it had to swallow this grievance. What was the point of jumping out in such a hurry to be slapped in the face? Haha, who knows if they cracked it themselves or plagiarized it? How is this plagiarism? At most, it's plagiarism. As Gun Yanji watched the commotion, she quietly posted the story on social media. Suddenly, all the world's flommers joined in and began mocking the Americans for their cracking operation. The Americans were naturally exasperated. They had never expected the Wuxia Empire to be more cunning than they had imagined. They refused to admit that they had fallen into the trap, and even tried to publicize the incident. They didn't want the Wuxia delegation to be in the limelight during the global press conference, so they immediately pushed Xian Xingao out. On the large LED screen of the International Telecommunications Conference, Harvard University's press conference was reaching its climax. "Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to announce that we were able to crack the Wuxia Empire's Nandu system password because we had an outstanding female student from the Wuxia Empire leading the team." Xian Xingao's graceful and elegant face appeared on the screen, and the image was simultaneously broadcast to the rest of the world. The International Telecommunications Conference fell silent again. Everyone looked at the young female student with complicated expressions. Gun Yanji had already turned on the television to watch the live broadcast of the American news. When she saw that the Americans had finally pushed Xian Xingao out, Gun Yanji felt a chill run down her spine and her palms were sweaty. She looked at the proud Xian Xingao on the screen and shook her head regretfully. The Americans had basically exonerated themselves by doing this. It didn't matter if their reputation was good or bad, it was all Xian Xingao's fault. Xian Xingao had to either admit to treason or plagiarism, and shamelessly take advantage of someone else's information. This had nothing to do with the Americans at all. Xian Xingao was still holding a Wuxia Empire passport when she did this. She was a citizen of the Wuxia Empire and a foreign student in the United States. Everyone in the Wuxia delegation at the International Telecommunications Conference looked grim, especially the scientists who were trembling with anger. Xian Xingao received a call and seemed to realize that she was in a precarious situation. At the award ceremony that followed, Xian Xingao gave an emotional speech in defense of herself. Science knows no boundaries. I just want to be a quiet scholar and explore the highest peak of science. Gu Nianji's last shred of sympathy for Xan Xingao vanished. Explore the highest peak of science? Why aren't you afraid of falling to your death? Gu Nianji cursed under her breath as she once again snuck into Xan Xingao's computer and replaced the PowerPoint slide that Xan Xingao was about to play. As Xan Xingao gave her speech, she displayed a PowerPoint presentation on the screen behind her. She was going to tell the world how she cracked the Nandu system's password. Treason? Plagiarism? She couldn't afford to bear any reputation. Everyone look, this is the entire process of our team cracking the password. Xan Xingao turned around as she spoke. She held the laser stick in her hand and stared at the big screen behind her. Suddenly she froze. The whole world was watching the big screen behind her with bated breath. On the big screen behind her, four sentences were written in Chinese, English, German, and Russian with black and large letters. Science knows no boundaries, but scientists have a motherland. Science knows no boundaries, but scientists have a motherland. Science knows no boundaries, but scientists have a motherland. Science knows no boundaries, but scientists have a motherland. Oh holy dash asterisk 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 asterisk. The staff at Harvard University's press conference gasped in shock. Switch the image. Switch the image. The world's major media outlets were in chaos as they scrambled to rewrite the subtitles on the big screen. However, the words were too bold and black. They took up the entire screen and the tiny mosaic could not bear the weight. Countless people watching the live broadcast quickly took screenshots and uploaded them to social media. The PowerPoint presentation, Science Knows No Boundaries, but Scientists Have a Motherland, immediately became a popular profile picture and was loved by young people all over the world. Xan Xingao trembled at the sudden turn of events. She rushed to her work computer and desperately tried to close the PowerPoint file, but it was as if the computer had crashed. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't turn it off. In the end, she had no choice but to disconnect the power supply of her work computer before she disconnected the nightmarish PowerPoint file. At the International Telecommunications Conference, Zhao Liangzi had a proud smile on his face. He crossed his arms as he admired the unbearable and humiliating global press conference from Harvard University's School of Electronic Engineering on the big LED screen on the podium. He said softly, "Nianji, good job." Hua Xiaoheng looked at him. Was it Nianji? Who else could it be? Zhao Liangzi turned to look at Hua Xiaoheng, a wide smile on his lips. She's smarter than I thought. Hua Xiaoheng couldn't help but smile, but he quickly calmed down and fell silent. He looked through the LED screen and could almost see Gu Nianji's large eyes curved into two crescent moons as she smiled sweetly at him. The chaotic Harvard press conference ended like a farce. Bai Shuang took the opportunity to briefly introduce the superior performance and price of the Nandu system from the podium. She also emphasized that the Nandu system was compatible with the Copernicus system, so the cost of switching from the Copernicus system to the Nandu system was very low. She only needed to adjust the frequency. The Nandu system covered the entire world, unlike the Copernicus system which only covered the European region. The stunning appearance of the Nandu system attracted attention from all over the world. Orders from manufacturers all over the world poured in like snowflakes. The International Telecommunications Conference had almost become the Wuxia Empire's Nandu system press conference. The Wuxia Empire's delegation returned with a resounding victory at the International Telecommunications Conference. When they got off the plane at the Imperial Capital Airport late at night, they discovered that the airport was packed with people from all walks of life. As the most popular host of the conference, Bai Shuang had gained countless fans. Bai Shuang, Bai Shuang, Bai Shuang. Shuang Shuang, we love you. Her popularity rose among the young people. Her clever, "It's my fault," at the conference quickly became the catchphrase of the Wuxia Empire's youth. Countless, "It's my fault" jokes appeared on the internet, and she was in the limelight for a while. Bai Shuang walked out of the airport exit with flowers sent by her fans. She looked around, trying to see where Secretary Zhao and the chief were. She knew that her contribution this time was completely due to Secretary Zhao's words to save her from the awkward situation. However, after looking around for a long time, she didn't see them. There were only groups of fans shouting her name, holding up autograph books for her to sign. Deputy Minister Yen of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs chuckled. "Don't bother looking, they've already left." He winked at her and got into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs car. It was the third watch. Asking for monthly and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Hurry up and vote. Important things must be repeated 3 times. If you can't vote anymore, remember to save the guaranteed monthly votes for the Major General next month, okay? Chapter 130. Bai Shuang was a bit disappointed as she stood in the airport lobby with a large bouquet of lilies in her arms. She still wore the standard diplomatic smile as she scanned her surroundings. She didn't see the tall and steady figure of the bureau chief, nor did she see Secretary Zhao's handsome smile. She looked down to hide the anxiety and disappointment in her eyes. Surrounded by several police officers, she bent over and got into another Ministry of Foreign Affairs car to leave the airport. After the International Telecommunications Conference, Gu Nianji felt like she was about to collapse. She slept at home for 2 days before she recovered. Yin Shixiang knew she had put in a lot of effort. He admired and felt sorry for her, so he went to He Zhichu to ask for leave for her. Ask for leave again? Is she really sick? He Zhichu received Yin Shixiang's call. His calm voice was full of displeasure. Of course it's true. Do I need to fake it for her? Yin Shixiang was also unhappy. She still has a fever. If it doesn't go down this afternoon, I'll have to take her to the hospital. He Zhichu thought about it for a moment and grunted. He didn't say yes or no and hung up the phone. He was working alone in his office. There were still many emails in his inbox to deal with, but his eyes kept glancing at the exquisite little desk under the wall in front of him. Gu Nianji used to sit there, hugging her little laptop and concentrating on her work. He Zhichu looked away and returned to his computer to work meticulously. He didn't turn off the computer until it was dark outside. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, massaging his temples. He wasn't hungry at all, but he remembered Gu Nianji was supposedly sick. He drove to a Chinese restaurant he thought was good and bought a few boxes of kanji suitable for patients. He drove to Gu Nianji's apartment. Professor He? Yin Shixiang saw He Zhichu through the peephole and opened the door in surprise. Why are you here? Please come in. Please come in. He Zhichu handed a large box to Yin Shixiang. Some kanji and side dishes. Let's see if Nianji can eat it. Oh. Yin Shixiang quickly took the box and put it in the kitchen. He invited He Zhichu to sit down. Professor He, would you like tea or coffee? Water is fine. He Zhichu sat elegantly on the sofa in the living room, his eyes sweeping over the magazines on the coffee table in front of the sofa. Yin Shixiang gave him an unopened bottle of mineral water and a glass. After you. He then said, I'll go see if Nianji is awake. He Zhichu had wanted to go over to take a look, but seeing how cautious Yin Shixiang was, he resisted the urge and nodded slightly. Don't wake her up. Gu Nianji was actually already awake, but she was too lazy to get out of bed. She was sitting there in a daze. His long black t-shirt was loose, and his long legs were dangling beside the bed. His mind was completely blank and he wasn't thinking about anything. The intense brain activity of the past few days was too much for her. Although his body was strong, he couldn't withstand such a huge consumption. Yin Shixiang knocked on her door, then gently pushed it open to see Gu Nianji sitting by the bed. The curtains of the room were tightly drawn, and the room was very dark. As soon as the door opened, a few rays of light came in through the crack. Gu Nianji instinctively shielded her eyes with her hand and asked hoarsely, Brother Xiong? Her face was as pale as snow, and her lips were so pale that they were almost invisible. The arm that blocked her eyes was extremely thin, and so white that the blue veins on her arm could be seen. You're awake. Yin Shixiang was also troubled to see her like this. Do you want to sleep a bit more? Do you still have a fever? Gu Nianji shook her head. Not anymore. I just sweated all over and feel uncomfortable. I want to take a shower. Go then. Yin Shixiang nodded. But Professor He is here to see you. He's sitting in the living room and brought you a few boxes of porridge. Are you hungry? Porridge? Gu Nianji licked her lips. I really want to eat. I'm so hungry. She looked at Yin Shixiang pitifully, and her large dark eyes revealed the desire of a kitten. Then change and come out for porridge. Yin Shixiang waved at her. Gu Nianji grunted and got up to change her clothes. Yin Shixiang returned to the living room and said to He Zhichu, Nianji just woke up and said she's hungry. She'll come out for porridge in a bit. Thank you, Professor He. You're welcome. He Zhichu replied dryly and turned to see Gu Nianji come out. She casually changed into a sapphire blue tennis dress. It was a sporty style and was made of thick cotton. It absorbed sweat and was comfortable to wear. However, this color made her face even whiter, and her eyebrows and eyelashes even darker. Her whole person had a kind of sickly fragility like a rare iced jade porcelain. There were dark blue marks on the jade white background. He Zhichu frowned. What happened? I haven't seen you in 2 or 3 days. How did you lose so much weight? Her previously plump cheeks had lost weight, and her already large eyes were as large as mirrors. She could clearly see her own reflection in them. Gunyanji smiled at Hijichu. Professor He, thank you for coming to see me. I just recovered from my illness and didn't do my homework for the past few days. Homework is fine. Don't tire yourself out. Hijichu looked at her quietly, an indescribable hint of worry flashing across his eyes. Gunyanji sat down and gulped down the porridge. She mumbled, Professor He, this porridge is delicious. It's my favorite flavor. Eat your porridge. Don't talk when you have food in your mouth. Hijichu frowned as he admonished her. Gunyanji raised a brow and ignored him. She ate 3 bowls of porridge in one go before her stomach felt better. After eating and drinking her fill, Gunyanji looked much better. Her snow-white cheeks were rosy. Hijichu relaxed and stood up. Rest for a few more days. You can go back to class when you're better. Gunyanji walked Hijichu to the door and waved with a smile. Thank you, Professor He. Take care, Professor He. After Hijichu left, In Shixiang came out of his room and rubbed his chin. Is Professor He always this nice to his students? Of course not. Gunyanji rolled her eyes. Only students like me who have good grades and are cute and obedient will be treated differently by the professors. Why are you like little Zay? You've learned to flatter yourself. In Shixiang didn't believe her and pretended to smack her on the head. Why aren't you taking a shower? Rest well for the next few days. I'll go see how Huaxiao and the others are doing. Huaxiaoheng and the others had already returned to the Huaxia Empire with the Huaxia Imperial delegation. Because they were being closely monitored by the CIA, they didn't contact In Shixiang and Gunyanji. In mid-July, the International Extraordinary Women's Awards were held in Sea City, Huaxia Empire. Deputy Director Feng of the Secret Service had meticulously arranged security measures to ensure that no one or anything could threaten the safety of the delegates. The international conference was held in Sea City's largest convention center. Deputy Director Feng wore a black suit and led the Secret Service to the convention center's lobby for a final inspection. Mr. Feng, our Miss Gu would like to invite you over. A tall man with black hair and blue eyes walked over and bowed politely to Deputy Director Feng. Deputy Director Feng looked up just in time to see a young woman in a pearl-white dress slowly descend from the escalator's handrail. Her posture was elegant, and her long black hair flowed smoothly behind her. She was a delicate beauty that didn't stand out at first glance, but at second glance, people couldn't take their eyes off of her. I was just about to look for Miss Gu. Deputy Director Feng breathed a sigh of relief. The woman who walked down from the escalator was the Barbados Chinese-American tycoon, Gu Yanran. Although she was only 24 years old, she was already a tycoon with billions of US dollars in assets. This was the first update. She had to go out today so she couldn't update at the same time. The second update was around 1 p.m., and her monthly vote was 2,700. The third update was around 7 p.m. Alright, it was the last day of July. If you have a monthly vote, then vote. If you don't, then it's invalid. There were also recommendation votes. Chapter 131. Miss Gu, we meet again. Deputy Minister Feng extended his hand politely to shake Gu Yanran's hand. Gu Yanran only touched his hand and spoke in perfect Huaxia Imperial language. Mr. Feng, nice to meet you. This way, please. Deputy Minister Feng turned and invited her to a small conference room in the convention center. Gu Yanran also had something to say to Deputy Minister Feng, so she followed him with a smile. They sat down in the small conference room, and Deputy Minister Feng immediately got to the point. Miss Gu, I'm sure you already know that we've done what you asked of us. Isn't it time for you to fulfill your promise? Gu Yanran smiled demurely and gently. Of course. But she looked at Deputy Minister Feng. This is a very important thing. I can give it to you, but you have to agree to one condition. There's a condition? Deputy Minister Feng's expression darkened. He narrowed his eyes and took a puff from his pipe. What did we say in the beginning? Can I go back on my word now just because it's not written in black and white? Mr. Feng, I didn't go back on my word. Gu Yanran spread her hands and smiled. I don't need to say more about how important this is, do I? Of course. Otherwise, why would I agree to solve such a big problem for you? Deputy Minister Feng didn't feel like he was smoking a pipe, but a flame. His anger surged. Mr. Feng, please don't be angry. That's not what I meant. Gu Yanran felt that Deputy Minister Feng had misunderstood and quickly explained, Of course I know that you guys put in a lot of effort to help me solve these problems. I'm really grateful. I'm here this time to give this to you first. She took out the blueprints and data from her Hermes Kelly bag. Second, I want to personally thank the people who helped me get rid of this problem. Deputy Minister Feng sighed in relief and removed the pipe from his mouth. He smiled. It's their job. You're welcome, Miss Gu. This isn't a matter of being welcome. Gu Yanran sighed and caressed the Hermes scarf around her neck with one hand. You did help me, but I'm also giving you such an important thing for free. It's not too much for you to satisfy my small request, right? Although they were doing business, human relations were more important. I'm not the kind of person who forgets morality at the sight of profit and only sees money. I just want to personally thank the hero who saved my life this time. Deputy Minister Feng finally understood Gu Yanran's intentions. He considered it for a long time before nodding. Okay, I'll ask for instructions. He took out his phone and quickly reported Gu Yanran's new conditions to the highest-ranking officer in the Imperial Army. When the Empire's military heard this, they expressed their understanding. In fact, they were quite impressed with Gu Yanran's sentimental and righteous way of handling matters. Deputy Minister Feng was happy to do them a favor and said with a smile, "Then hurry up and send someone over. Ordinary people can't make the decision. You have to send Major General Hua over. He has made such a great contribution, we can't just let him show his face, right?" Gu Yanran looked at Deputy Minister Feng's smug expression and found it hilarious. She quickly lowered her head and took a sip of her coffee to hide her expression. She was a businesswoman and business was business. Naturally, she had to maximize the profits of her products. After all, once she handed over the blueprints and data, she would no longer have the capital to negotiate with the Wuxia Empire. At such a young age, she already had hundreds of millions in assets. She needed to find a backer for herself. She was wealthy enough to rival a nation, but if she didn't have a powerful backer, her assets would be taken over by others sooner or later. Gu Yanran's move was a risky one. It was an idea given to her by her lawyer. From the looks of it, it had worked out well. She sat on the sofa leisurely and sipped her coffee. 10 minutes later, Hua Xiaoheng, dressed in his Imperial Major General uniform, arrived at the Sea City Convention and Exhibition Center with his personal secretary, Zhao Liangzi, and 2 orderlies. Deputy Minister Feng, our chief is here. Zhao Liangzi knocked on the door of the small conference room on the first floor of the Convention and Exhibition Center. Although the conference room was small, it was surrounded by countless Secret Service personnel. Now, with the addition of the elites of the 6th Military Region Special Operations Forces, it was so tight that not even a fly could enter. "Come in." Deputy Minister Feng personally opened the door. Gu Yanran put down her coffee cup and narrowed her eyes. A tall young soldier walked in. His navy blue uniform was buttoned up neatly to the base of his neck. There was a golden pine branch and a gold star on his epaulette. Gu Yanran was slightly moved. She recognized the epaulette. She had carefully studied the military insignia when she came to the Wuxia Empire. This person was so young, yet he was already a major general. Looking at his appearance for a major general in the army, he was ridiculously handsome, and his stature was ridiculously tall. Although he didn't say a word, his presence was unbelievably strong. He was like the ruler of the forest patrolling his territory. He only needed to look down and he could control the entire area. Gu Yanran stood up slowly and extended her hand. "I'm Gu Yanran. May I ask who you are?" Deputy Minister Feng introduced him proudly. "This is the Deputy Commander of the 6th Military Region, Major General Hua Xiaoheng. He's his subordinate. He's been a great help to you this time." Hua Xiaoheng ignored Gu Yanran's outstretched hand. Instead, he put his hands behind his back and said coolly, "Please follow your agreement with Deputy Minister Feng and hand over the data and blueprints of the small nuclear engine." Gu Yanran froze, then the corners of her lips gradually turned up to reveal a faint smile. She nodded and retracted her hand. Pointing to the sofa beside her, she said, "Major General Hua is so concise. Let's sit down and talk. I've wanted to thank you for a long time. I'm here to collect the blueprints, not to have a discussion." Hua Xiaoheng said expressionlessly. His eyes were deep and dark and always gave people an invisible pressure when he looked at them. Gu Yanran stared at him for a while. As expected, she couldn't stand the pressure of his gaze. She turned her head away and looked at Deputy Minister Feng. She joked, "Deputy Minister Feng, are all the higher-ups in the military so serious?" Hua Xiaoheng didn't have the patience to socialize with people like this. There probably wasn't anyone in this world who could make him put down his pride and socialize. He turned to leave and said, Little Zay, bring the blueprints to me. The door to the small conference room slammed shut. Only Zhao Liangzi and Deputy Minister Feng stayed. Deputy Minister Feng smoked his pipe awkwardly again. Miss Gu, please don't take it to heart. Our Major General Hua has a short temper. It's okay. It's your blessing to have such a strong general in the military. Gu Yanran didn't seem to think Hua Xiaoheng was being rude at all. She opened her Hermes Kelly bag and took out a set of blueprints and a small USB flash drive to hand to Zhao Liangzi. It's all here. Take it. Zhao Liangzi took it and saluted her. Thank you, Miss Gu. He turned to leave. Deputy Minister Feng laughed and clapped. Good. Everything is settled perfectly. I'll treat Miss Gu to dinner. Gu Yanran smiled. You're welcome, Mr. Feng. There will be a reception at the end of this year's conference. I wonder if Mr. Feng will be able to attend? After a pause, he continued, if Major General Hua can attend, I still have a big gift for him. It was the second update, and the monthly vote was 2,700 plus updates. The third update was around 7 o'clock p.m. Alright, it was the last day of July. If you have a monthly vote, then vote. If you don't, then it's invalid. There were also recommendations. I forgot my watch. Thanks to Rin Binger for the 2 pieces of Husher Jade yesterday. Thanks to Enigma Yangxi for the Husher Jade in the wee hours of the morning. Mwah. If you don't have any more votes for this month, then remember to vote for the Major General for the month of August tomorrow. Chapter 132. I see. Deputy Minister Feng lowered his head, a cunning glint in his eyes. I can't guarantee that. You saw Major General Hua's temper just now. He's a soldier, not a diplomat, nor a member of the Secret Service. He really has no obligation to attend the reception. Gu Yanran was disappointed. Forget it then. I really admire a young officer like Major General Hua. I originally wanted to set up a special military charity fund in your country, specifically for the compensation of soldiers who died in the line of duty and their families. Deputy Minister Feng's eyes lit up. He removed the pipe from his mouth. Didn't you say you wanted to transfer half of your assets to our country? Then this charity fund? This charity fund is one of the projects that the Gu Corporation is currently discussing. Gu Yanran smiled and added, actually, we don't have to set up this charity fund in your country. There are many people from other countries who are interested. Although she was only 24 years old, she was very good at business and hit the nail on the head. Deputy Minister Feng found that he couldn't refuse Gu Yanran's conditions again. But he was still clear-headed and rational. He couldn't make the decision on this matter. Don't worry, Miss Gu. I'll make sure to pass on this to my superiors and see what they think. The 3-day International Extraordinary Women's Awards Conference had come to an end. The last day was the closing ceremony and reception. Apart from the delegates and organizers, there were also prominent figures from all walks of life in the Wuxia Empire. Only the elites were able to get tickets. Even the new spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bai Shuang, had come all the way from the imperial capital to attend the closing ceremony and reception. She was also a special guest at the International Extraordinary Women's Awards Conference. Not long ago, the Wuxia Empire's delegation had unexpectedly made a beautiful comeback at the International Telecommunications Conference. They had easily resolved a major international incident that was on the brink of failure, seized the opportunity to open up the Nandu system to the global market, and dug a huge pit for the arrogant Americans to fall into. Unfortunately, the Americans had pushed Xian Xingao out in the end to save face. The 6th Military Region, led by Hua Xiaoheng, had achieved an unexpected success on their first expedition to Europe. It had also truly made the 6th Military Region famous in the Wuxia Imperial Military. At least in the entire Wuxia Empire, there was no longer any opposition to the establishment of the 6th Military Region. And the one who gained the most from the whole incident was Bai Shuang, the spokesperson of the delegation on the stage. After she returned to China, she was immediately promoted from the first secretary of the embassy in Austria to the deputy director of the information department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, becoming the new spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As the fastest promoted female official in the Wuxia imperial government, Bai Shuang was also recognized by the International Extraordinary Women Awards Conference. The closing ceremony was in the afternoon, and the cocktail party was in the evening. When Bai Shuang came to the banquet, she was only wearing a light gray suit dress with simple lines. The tailoring was very fitting. It was handmade by an old tailor in the capital and was comparable to the custom-made versions of international famous brands. The female politicians of other countries who attended the meeting all recognized Bai Shuang. Bai Shuang, the new spokesperson of the Wuxia Empire's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, had made a name for herself with her witty remarks at the International Telecommunications Conference. She had already become a role model for countless feminists around the world. Bai Shuang held a glass of champagne and chatted cheerfully with these female politicians. She was very frank and generous. The reception was held in the hall on the second floor of the exhibition center. Wu Xiaoheng and Zhao Liangzi stood on the balcony that extended from the hall on the second floor of the reception. They had no interest in listening to the chatter of the women. Wu Xiaoheng wasn't wearing his military uniform. Instead, he was wearing a luxurious black casual suit. The buttons on his chest were unbuttoned, revealing a white iron-free Egyptian cotton shirt underneath. His sleeves were rolled up and his matching trousers were straight. He held a cigarette between his fingers as he leaned against the balcony railing, lost in thought. Zhao Liangzi was also wearing a light blue casual suit, white trousers and a white t-shirt. He appeared more casual than Wu Xiaoheng and made his handsome features look even more charming. He also held a cigarette between his fingers. As he smoked, he looked down at his phone. "Brother Zhe, what are you doing?" It was past 7 in the morning on Gu Nianji's side. She had just gotten up to go jogging. When she came back, she swiped open her phone and saw that Zhao Liangzi had sent her a text message asking how she had been recently. Gu Nianji immediately happily texted Zhao Liangzi. Zhao Liangzi received Gu Nianji's reply and looked at his watch in surprise. According to the time difference, it was only past 7 in the morning on Gu Nianji's side, and it was Saturday there. Why was she up so early on the weekend? Zhao Liangzi replied, "At the reception." As he spoke, he looked at Wu Xiaoheng, who was leaning against the balcony railing and silently smoking. He added, "Wu Xiao is also there." Gu Nianji's interest was immediately piqued. She pestered Zhao Liangzi to watch the live broadcast. Zhao Liangzi couldn't help but snicker. He replied, "What's there to watch? A bunch of women chattering like hundreds of ducks. Brother Zhe, if you talk like that, those people will fight you to the death." Gu Nianji kept begging him, "Besides, I don't want to watch those women. Just let me see Uncle Hua." Zhao Liangzi was about to refuse when Deputy Minister Yan from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs walked out and grabbed Wu Xiaoheng's arm. "Come, Mr. Hua, someone's looking for you. Come quickly." Wu Xiaoheng had been forced to attend this reception by the highest-ranking military officer of the empire. He was a soldier. Even if he was asked to dance, he would do anything as long as it was a military mission, much less attend a reception. He was willing to do anything to win. It wouldn't be the first time he had resorted to unscrupulous means. But it was completely impossible for him to put on a smile and go along with the flow. He followed Deputy Minister Yan expressionlessly to the reception hall. They passed through circles of chatting people and arrived at a corner of the hall. Bai Shuang turned around and smiled at Wu Xiaoheng. "Chief, we meet again." Wu Xiaoheng nodded. "Secretary Bai." Deputy Minister Yan smiled. "She's no longer Secretary Bai. Bai Shuang is now the youngest spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She has a bright future ahead of her. Congratulations." Wu Xiaoheng nodded. Bai Shuang was very excited and quickly said, "Please don't say that, Chief. I really want to thank you and your Secretary Zhao this time." Wu Xiaoheng watched as the cigarette in his hand was thrown into the trash can in the corner. He reached out to take a glass of red wine from a passing waiter's tray and gestured to Bai Shuang. "Cheers." Zhao Liangzi was alone on the balcony and finally agreed to Gu Nianji's request. He turned on the video call and pointed it in Wu Xiaoheng's direction in the hall. From the other end of the hall, Gu Yanran, wearing a pear white Chanel summer dress suit, was also led by Deputy Minister Feng to Wu Xiaoheng and Bai Shuang. Gu Nianji held the phone and saw two beautiful women standing on Wu Xiaoheng's left and right through the video call that Zhao Liangzi showed her. She knew one of them. She was the spokesperson for the conference, Bai Shuang. She didn't know the other one, but she was beautiful and was a rare beauty. Gu Nianji's eyes quickly scanned the two women and stopped on Wu Xiaoheng. Unfortunately, from Zhao Liangzi's angle, she could only see Wu Xiaoheng's back. But just seeing his back was enough to make her eyes light up and want to lick the screen. At that moment, Bai Shuang was recalling the most nerve-wracking part of the conference to Wu Xiaoheng. "When I heard the Americans announce that they had cracked the password, my whole body went cold. I didn't know how to respond. Fortunately, it was you who helped me. The text message that your subordinate, Secretary Zhao, sent to me solved my urgent problem. It was the third watch. Okay, it was the last day of July. If you have a monthly vote, cast it. If you don't, it will be invalid. Also, I forgot to count the recommendation votes. If you don't have any more votes for this month, Then remember to vote for the Major General for the month of August tomorrow. Oh, intersection. Oh. Chapter 133. Hua Xiaoheng's eyes flashed as he recalled the sharp words that had turned the situation around. Gu Nianji, who was as obedient as a kitten in front of him, actually had such a cunning and clever side. He put one hand in his trouser pocket and raised his glass with the other. It was rare for him to be humorous. So you're blaming me? Hua Xiaoheng tilted his head, the corners of his lips curling up slightly. His face, which had always been cold and frightening, was now smiling. Deep laughter came from his chest, with an irresistible magnetism. His face, which was so handsome that it made people despair, suddenly felt as if he had been saved from a desperate situation. Although the smile was fleeting, Gu Nianji saw it through the video call. Hua Xiaoheng, who had always been blunt with others, was actually smiling so happily in Bai Shuang's direction. Gu Nianji felt like her heart had been hit by a sledgehammer, and her eyes suddenly felt sore. Her hands began to shake uncontrollably. She looked up at the relief on the bedroom ceiling for a long time, then clicked her fingers off the phone and took the initiative to end the video call with Zhao Liangzi. Bai Shuang had never seen Hua Xiaoheng smile. Although the smile was very short, she was still greatly encouraged and couldn't help saying, "Yes, that was a really good sentence. Secretary Zhao helped me so much, so I should thank him properly." Hua Xiaoheng's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he suddenly felt like he was being watched. He turned around and saw Zhao Liangzi frowning at his phone on the balcony. As soon as Hua Xiaoheng turned around, Zhao Liangzi saw it from his phone. He quickly turned off the video call and looked up at Hua Xiaoheng with a smile and waved. Hua Xiaoheng raised his chin and motioned for him to come over. Zhao Liangzi quickly put his phone in his pocket and ran over with a smile. He took a glass of champagne from the waiter and also raised it to Bai Shuang. "Congratulations, Deputy Director Bai." The spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was a part-time position, and had to be the director or deputy director of the information department. Bai Shuang became the new spokesperson, so she would definitely be promoted to the deputy director of the information department. Bai Shuang blushed but still graciously clinked glasses with Zhao Liangzi and smiled. "I was just talking to the chief about you. If it weren't for you, my mission would have been ruined." "How could I?" Zhao Liangzi laughed even more happily. "Besides, it wasn't me." Hua Xiaoheng, who had been silent all this while, suddenly coughed and said to Bai Shuang, "Excuse me, I'm going to sit over there for a while." With that he turned around and left. Zhao Liangzi understood that Hua Xiaoheng was warning him not to drag Gu Nianji into this. He couldn't help but smile bitterly to himself. He felt that it would be unfair to Gu Nianji to take away her credit just like that. However, he couldn't ignore Hua Xiaoheng's order. He also knew that dragging Gu Nianji into this matter wouldn't benefit her at all. Zhao Liangzi quickly saluted Hua Xiaoheng's departing figure. "Take care, Chief." From beginning to end, Hua Xiaoheng didn't even glance at Gu Yanran, who was standing on the other side of him. However, Gu Yanran did not feel left out at all. Instead, she stood at the side with interest and listened to their conversation carefully. They were probably talking about official matters, so she didn't really understand. However, she could tell that spokesperson Bai blushed when he saw the tall and handsome Secretary Zhao. Although his eyes were looking at the ground 3 feet in front of him, the corners of his eyes were completely focused on Secretary Zhao. However, Secretary Zhao didn't know whether it was because his heart belonged to someone else, or because he wasn't enlightened, or because he completely looked down on this spokesperson Bai. His demeanor was open and at ease, and it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Seeing Hua Xiaoheng turn around and walk to the corner of the hall, where he sat down behind a row of indoor green potted plants, Gu Yanran followed him. "Major General Hua, I'm very happy that you came to this reception. Deputy Director Feng is still a man of his word." Gu Yanran smiled and sat diagonally across him. She raised her glass to Hua Xiaoheng's. "Cheers." Hua Xiaoheng rested one hand on the back of the sofa and swirled the wine glass in his other hand. His long legs that were crossed almost took up the entire space of the lounge. "Miss Gu, I have to remind you that the original intention of charity is to help people, not to blackmail them." With that, he put down his wine glass and stood up to walk out without looking back. Deputy Director Feng jumped over from the side and smiled. "Miss Gu, look, Major General Hua is here, right?" Gu Yanran couldn't help laughing and nodded. "Of course, I keep my word. Of course he was here, and he even said something to her," Gu Yanran thought sarcastically. She couldn't expect Hua Xiaoheng to be like other men and kneel down and lick her every time he saw her, could she? What was the point of being such a spineless person? If her huge business empire and family needed a strong backing, she would definitely choose an unruly and aggressive lion, not a dog that only knew how to bark and wag its tail. Gu Nianji lay on the bed in a daze. Her mind was filled with Hu Xiaoheng's faint smile. Her eyes were very sore, but she forced herself to keep them open and look up so the tears wouldn't flow. After an unknown amount of time, her phone suddenly rang. Gu Nianji didn't want to pick it up, but the ringing persistently was too annoying. She grabbed the phone and was about to turn it off when she saw it was Zhao Quan. The Prince Charming from the School of Electronic Engineering. Gu Nianji thought about it and unlocked the phone. Prince Charming Zhao? Zhao Quan burst into laughter. Nianji, don't joke around. I have something serious to talk to you about. What is it? Gu Nianji was now very familiar with the Wuxia Imperial Student Union. After Xian Xinggao's incident, the Wuxia Imperial Student Union had issued the harshest condemnation and a statement to draw a clear line between them and Xian Xinggao. Of course, Gu Nianji had played a big part in that. Xian Xinggao was now under the protection of the U.S. military, and they were only students. The only thing they could do was make their stand clear. It's like this. We have a women's softball match with the Indian Student Union today, but Xian Xinggao isn't on our team anymore. She's joined the Indian team, so we're still missing one player. Do you know how to play softball? Can you fill in for her? Gu Nianji didn't want to stay home alone and let her imagination run wild. She was extremely depressed and needed a chance to vent her pent-up frustrations. Softball? Baseball, right? Sure, I know how to play. Wait, I'll be right there. Tell me the address? Gu Nianji got up with her phone and began rummaging through her closet for her baseball uniform, cap, and bat. It's at the baseball field on the west side. Zhao Quan was very happy. Hurry over, there's a lot of people coming to watch the game today. Gu Nianji's baseball skills had been honed with the special forces in the army, so her skills were passable. However, she didn't usually have many opportunities to play, so she hoped she wouldn't be a burden today. Gu Nianji changed her clothes and came out to Yin Shixiang. Brother Xiong, I want to go out and play. Yin Shixiang saw her change into her baseball uniform and carry a long baseball bat. He laughed. You're going to play baseball? Yeah, we're playing against the Indian Third Sisters today. I'm going to stretch. Gu Nianji waved the bat and gritted her teeth. This was the first watch. Today was August 1st, Major General Hua's day. Everyone don't forget to vote for him. To celebrate, today was the fourth watch. The second watch was around 10 o'clock, and the monthly vote was 2,800 plus updates. The third watch was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the monthly vote was 2,900 plus updates. The fourth watch was around 7 o'clock in the evening. Also, on Monday I forgot the recommendation list. Thanks to Yun Han and Yu Qin for tipping me the Heshabi yesterday. Mwah. Oh, intersection. Oh. Chapter 134. Play the Indian Hindustan team? Yin Shixiang grinned. Sure, I'll cheer for you. Then let's go together. Gu Nianji slung the baseball bat over her shoulder and opened the door to leave. Yin Shixiang hurriedly found his baseball cap and followed her to the baseball field. They would be staying there for half a year. Yin Shixiang had originally bought a used SUV. However, he and Gu Nianji didn't drive on the Harvard campus. Instead, they rode mountain bikes, which served as a means of transportation and also for exercise. Gu Nianji and Yin Shixiang rode to the baseball field on the west side. There were already a lot of people there. The Wuxia Imperial Student Union's women's softball team wore red and white uniforms. The Indian Student Union's women's softball team wore yellow and orange uniforms, the same color as the Indian saris. Gu Nianji was also wearing a baseball uniform with a red top and white bottom. Her features were as exquisite as a manga girl's, and her long hair was tied into a ponytail that swayed from behind the baseball cap. She looked fresh and tender like the first drop of dew on a summer morning. Several law school boys recognized Gu Nianji and couldn't help whistling at her. Among them was Alan, who had asked her if she had a boyfriend on her first day of class. Nini? 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 He waved and shouted Gu Nianji's English name, jumping and laughing as he said to everyone, "See that cute beauty? She backslashes mine. She backslashes mine." Yin Shixiang found a place to sit with a wide smile. He watched Gu Nianji's nimble running figure and felt the joy of having a daughter in his family. "Nianji, you're finally here. Look, we're already behind 5-1. Zhao Quan ran over, sweating profusely. "Do you really know how to play?" Gu Nianji looked at the score on the field. As expected, they were losing badly. Xian Xinggao was wearing the Indian team's uniform and was chatting happily with an Indian man. Zhao Quan followed Gu Nianji's gaze and whispered, "That's her boyfriend." Gu Nianji said angrily, "She deserves to smell like curry for the rest of her life." Zhao Quan chuckled. "Just ignore her." But looking around he added, "But don't underestimate her. She's very good at softball. Out of the 5 points of the Indian team, 3 were scored by her alone." Gu Nianji waved the baseball bat in her hand. "Don't be afraid, let me do it." As they spoke, the referee blew his whistle. The Wuxia Empire women's team had already occupied 3 bases. It was Gu Nianji's turn. "All the best, Nianji. All the best, Nianji. Nini, you /re the best." Gu Nianji waved at everyone and went on the field with the bat. The opponent's pitcher was very muscular and tall. His entire body was almost twice the size of Gu Nianji. She looked at Gu Nianji's tall and slender figure and suddenly raised her leg. She swung her upper arm with all her might, and the softball slammed into Gu Nianji's bulging chest. The angle of the throw was very tricky. If it was a male team member, this kind of fighting style wouldn't be a big deal. However, the way the female team members were playing was somewhat despicable. Under normal circumstances, the batter would avoid this kind of disgusting ball. However, as the batter, Gu Nianji's mood was so depressed that she wanted to vent. Therefore, when she saw the tricky and disgusting ball fly by, she didn't avoid it. Instead, she quickly moved to the side, then leaped up and swung the bat with both arms. She aimed at the bottom of the fast softball and hit it hard. Whoosh! The softball was hit diagonally by the bat and immediately bounced back. It whizzed through the air and disappeared. Gu Nianji threw down the bat and quickly ran to first base, second base and third base. Before the opponent could find the softball she had hit, she had already returned to home base. Home run. Home run? She / got home run? The Wuxia Empire Student Union suddenly erupted. Gu Nianji hit a home run as soon as she entered the field. She scored 4 points in one go and pulled the score to a 5-5 tie. "Nianji, you're amazing. I'm so glad I called you over." Zhao Quan handed Gu Nianji a bottle of water and a small towel to wipe her sweat with. Gu Nianji accepted it and giggled as she took a sip of water. "It's their turn next. We can't relax." It was time for the Indian team to bat. The Wuxia Empire Student Union sent Zhao Quan's girlfriend as the pitcher. The Indian team actually sent out Xian Xingao. The field suddenly fell silent. She had just helped the Indian team score 3 points, and now the Wuxia Empire had caught up to them. Gu Nianji took another sip of water and stood quietly on the sidelines. She heard the referee's whistle and the game began again. This time, Xian Xingao seemed to be going all out, not to score but to get revenge. She swung her bat and hit the softball thrown by the opposing pitcher 3 times. She hit the Wuxia Empire's pitcher until his face was swollen and bruised. In the end, she even hit Zhao Quan's girlfriend in the nose, causing her to have a nosebleed. "Xian Xingao, stop." Zhao Quan was furious and stood up. The Wuxia Empire Student Union became even more rowdy, but they only protested and expressed their dissatisfaction. The referee was on the same side as the Indian team and pretended not to see Xian Xingao's outrageous behavior. "Come at me then. Hit me here if you dare." Xian Xingao raised the bat and pointed it at her head as she looked at the Wuxia Empire team provocatively. "Since you're asking me to hit you, then I won't hold back." Gu Nianji stood up abruptly and raised the bat to charge at Xian Xingao. "I'll hit you, you traitor." Bang 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 bang. Gu Nianji didn't hold back and broke Xian Xingao's right hand that was holding the bat. She then swung the bat back at the back of Xian Xingao's head. Xian Xingao hadn't expected someone from the Wuxia Empire team to actually dare to hit her. She screamed as she clutched her broken right wrist. The sharp pain in the back of her head caused her to roll her eyes and fall limply to the ground. "She's hitting me. She's hitting me." When the girls from the Indian team saw this, they all rushed forward and raised their bats to attack Gu Nianji. Although Gu Nianji was skilled and swung the bat around, she couldn't handle the sheer number of opponents. Her face was grazed by one of the bats and immediately swelled up. "Go. Hit her hard." The girls from the Wuxia Empire team finally recovered and charged at the Indian team with baseball bats. They surrounded Gu Nianji and prevented anyone else from hitting her. Yin Shixiang watched in shock as the 2 groups of women fought on the baseball field until he saw the red and swollen marks on Gu Nianji's face. He rushed in to protect her head and rescue her. Beep, beep, beep. Someone called the police. At this time, Harvard University's campus police rushed over with electric batons and pistols. They separated the 2 teams who were fighting and escorted them to the police car and took them away. Gu Nianji was no exception. She was pulled away from Yin Shixiang and taken to a police car. Yin Shixiang broke out in a sweat and suddenly remembered He Jichu. He immediately called him. Professor He Nianji was taken away by the campus police. Today was August 1st, Major General Hua's birthday. Everyone, please don't forget to vote for him. To celebrate, today was the 4th watch. This was the 2nd watch. The monthly vote was 2+1. The 3rd watch was around 1 in the afternoon. The monthly vote was 2,900 plus 1. The 4th watch was around 7 in the evening. Also, I forgot the recommendation list on Monday. Thanks to Yunhan and Yuqin for tipping me the heshabi yesterday. Moi. Chapter 135. When He Jichu received Yin Shixiang's call, he was fishing by the lake at home. What? Say it again. Who took Nianji away? He Jichu threw down his fishing rod and stood up. His expression was even colder. Although it was a hot summer day, the people around him suddenly felt cold. It's like this. Nianji was originally playing softball with the Indian team, but something happened. The other team provoked her by throwing a ball at her teammates. You know how Nianji is. She's young, so she rushed up and started fighting. Yin Shixiang gripped his phone and stamped his feet. He was sweating profusely. Go and see. Anyway, it was a mess on the field. Nianji was the first one to attack, and she may have been a bit heavy-handed. Both the Indian team and her team were arrested and sent to the campus police. He Jichu didn't say anything else. He hung up and strode to his garage. Not long after, a Lamborghini roared out of the garage and drove towards Harvard's main campus. At the Harvard campus police office, a group of girls in baseball uniforms were being held in 2 separate locations. Soon after, people came to complete the procedures and take their own people away. Only Gu Nianji refused. People from the Wuxia Student Union came several times, but the campus police refused to let them go. A fat black policewoman pointed at the president of the Wuxia Student Union and yelled, "No, no, no." I said no. She hit someone. Seriously injured. She has to take legal responsibility. She had a belly bigger than a 10-month pregnancy. When she stood up, everyone could only back away. Someone else also hit her. Why did you let them go? Don't they have to take legal responsibility for hitting someone? The Wuxia Student Union was furious and raised their voice. Don't yell at me. Don't yell at me. The fat black policewoman's expression suddenly changed. I can get you arrested if you keep yelling. I can get someone to arrest you if you keep yelling. The Wuxia Student Union didn't dare to argue with the policewoman anymore. They could only leave the campus police office to discuss how to save Gu Nianji. Although she did hit someone and she did it quite harshly, we all know who she hit, right? I can only say that you can be more ruthless, so nothing must happen to her. We can't let anything happen to her. But someone chuckled and said, I didn't expect Nianji, who looks so delicate and young, to be so fierce in a group fight. It's not just that Xian girl. I saw a few Indian girls behind her getting beaten up by her. That's good. She's so pretty. If I'm not a bit more powerful, I don't know how much I'll suffer. Zhao Quan sighed and turned to look at the campus police station. Will the people here take advantage of her? They had read too much about the dark side of American prisons. Although this was only the campus police office, they were deeply worried about Gu Nianji when they saw the unreasonable campus police. After some discussion, a few members of the student council decided to seek help from the Wuxia Imperial Consulate General in Boston. Yin Shixiang followed them and listened for a long time. He knew that this matter could be tricky. He Jichu hadn't arrived yet, and even if he did, Yin Shixiang wasn't sure how far He Jichu would go for Gu Nianji. If it was really as the student union said, and the consulate general had to step in to solve the problem, then Huoxiao must know about it. Yin Shixiang quickly sent an encrypted email to Zhao Liangzi, saying that it was urgent. At this time it was already past 10 p.m. in China. Huoxiao had left the reception a long time ago. Zhao Liangzi had wanted to leave as well, but Bai Shuang had dragged him to drink a few more glasses. He was shy and didn't want to just leave like that, so he patiently chatted with her. Although Zhao Liangzi had never had a girlfriend before, he knew what it was like. With regards to Bai Shuang's overly enthusiastic greeting, he smiled and pretended not to notice. His attitude was just right. With his training, if he didn't want others to know who was in his heart, then no one would be able to tell what he was thinking. Bai Shuang also discovered that although Zhao Liangzi was easy to talk to, it was extremely difficult to get close to him. Secretary Zhao, are you usually busy with work? Bai Shuang poured Zhao Liangzi a 4th glass of red wine. Zhao Liangzi accepted it nonchalantly and smiled. That's hard to say. When we're busy, we don't go home all year round. When we're not busy, we can sleep at home for half a year. He wouldn't tell Bai Shuang the truth about his work. Ah, I didn't expect your work to be so interesting. Bai Shuang nodded with a smile. My sister is also a soldier and will be transferred to the 6th Military Region soon. She will be colleagues with you in the future, so I can visit you when I have time. Welcome, welcome. Zhao Liangzi noticed that his phone was vibrating. He put down his wine glass and took out his phone to look at it. It was an encrypted email from Yin Shixiang. Usually, when he used encrypted emails, it was when something happened. Excuse me, I have to take a call. Zhao Liangzi nodded at Bai Shuang and walked to the balcony with his phone. He leaned against the balcony railing and called Yin Shixiang. Big Xiong, what's up? Yin Shixiang answered his call and immediately walked to a secluded place. He asked in a low voice, Where's Wuxiao? Are you there? Wuxiao went back. I'm at the reception at the convention center. What's up? Do you miss home? Do you want to come back? Zhao Liangzi smiled mischievously. Why don't we swap places? I want to go to the United States for a vacation. Vacation my ass. Yin Shixiang spat at the phone. Nianji is in trouble and it may be serious. It's Nianji? Zhao Liangzi immediately put away his cheeky smile and became serious. What happened to her? Did someone cause trouble for her? Zhao Liangzi knew why Hua Xiaoheng had agreed to let Gu Nianji go to the United States. Was Gu Nianji's background finally coming to light? It's not trouble, she's the one causing trouble. Yin Shixiang paced around irritably under the shade of the trees. He told him about how Gu Nianji's softball game had turned into a gang fight and how Xan Xinggao had been injured and hospitalized. Zhao Liangzi kept saying, ah and oh, for a long time, his mouth wide open. After a while he murmured, Little Nianji, oh little Nianji, looks like you're still as tough as ever. What did you say? Yin Shixiang frowned. I don't understand. Did you forget when Nianji first arrived? Zhao Liangzi's voice was calm. She was hitting and scratching anyone she saw. Although she was young, she was quite aggressive. She only managed to calm down after seeing Hua Xiao. Hearing this, Yin Shixiang also remembered, but he scratched his head and said in confusion, I think it's still different. Today Nianji, I can't explain it either. She's always had a good temper but I don't know why, but today it was like she ate a firecracker. She exploded at the slightest provocation. Zhao Liangzi suddenly remembered the video call Gu Nianji had suddenly hung up. He laughed. Oh, I think I know why. You know? Yeah, it must be because the video call was suddenly cut off today. She's upset. She probably lost her temper when she couldn't see Hua Xiao. Zhao Liangzi chuckled. I'll go talk to Hua Xiao. As soon as Yin Shixiang hung up the phone, he saw a flashy Lamborghini racing to the campus police office and stopping. Today is August 1st, Major General Hua's day. Everyone don't forget to vote for him. To celebrate, it's the 4th watch. It's the 3rd watch and the monthly vote is 2,900 plus 1 watch. Around 7 p.m. on the 4th watch. Also, I forgot the recommendation list on Monday. Chapter 136. The Lamborghini's door opened, and He Zhichu walked out with a frosty expression. He wore a tailored light blue striped shirt with simple lines and black hunting pants. The hem of his shirt was tucked into his belt, and the combination of wild elegance and elegance was actually very harmonious. Yin Shixiang hung up the phone and was about to follow them to take a look when he turned his head and saw a few Mercedes-Benz cars driving over one after another. Several tall white men in suits and leather shoes walked out of the cars, holding briefcases in their hands. They looked like elite lawyers at first glance. Yin Shixiang stopped in his tracks. These people were probably He Zhichu's helpers. Yin Shixiang was happy to see He Zhichu supporting Gu Nianji so openly, but there was also a hidden sense of worry and unease. They were all adults and generally knew that there was no such thing as a free lunch or free benefits in this world. However, as Gu Nianji's professor, it made sense that He Zhichu was protecting her at a critical moment. Yin Shixiang narrowed his eyes and decided to wait and see. He didn't want to make a mistake and make a fool of himself. He Zhichu put his hands in his trouser pockets and walked to the reception desk of the campus police office with a dark expression. He said coldly, Where's Gu Nianji? I'm her professor and I'm here to take her back. The fat black policewoman sat behind the reception desk and didn't even look up. I'm sorry, but Gu Nianji can't be bailed out. Bail? Who said I wanted to bail her out? He Zhichu's voice was even colder as he knocked on the policewoman's computer. Get her out right now or I'll sue you for illegal detention. You'll spend the rest of your life sweeping landmines in prison. Oh? Didn't you say you wouldn't bail her out? Why do you want me to let her out now? TSK. The fat black policewoman looked up arrogantly and sized Hijichu up. There were so many professors at Harvard and this policewoman barely knew any of them. She didn't need to know them because they had nothing to do with her work. Hijichu's brows furrowed even tighter. It's really hard to talk to people who don't know the law. You're not at the police station, so you don't have the right to mention bail. I'll say it again, let Gunyenji out. Otherwise, you can find someone to bail yourself out at the police station. Hijichu picked up his phone to call the police as he spoke. Only then did the fat black policewoman realize what was going on. She stood up from her seat in fright and pointed at the corridor on the side while trembling. She's over there, the third room. Hijichu immediately turned and walked to the other side of the corridor. In the detention room of the campus police office, Gunyenji's hands were raised high and cuffed to a metal frame. Fortunately, she was tall enough, otherwise she would have to stand on her tiptoes. An older Caucasian campus police officer smiled at Gunyenji, his cloudy eyes revealing a hint of lasciviousness. He stood in front of Gunyenji and looked her up and down. Gunyenji's hands were raised above her head as she was handcuffed to the metal frame. This position made her chest stand out even more, her waist even slimmer and her legs even straighter. Little girl, your skin is really good. I can't even see your pores up close. The old Caucasian campus police officer spoke as he extended a hairy hand to touch Gunyenji's red and swollen cheek. Poor thing, how did you get beaten up like this? Gunyenji turned her head abruptly to avoid the old police officer's hand. Click. The sound of a gun being cocked came from the door. Extend your hand another centimeter and I promise it won't grow on your wrist anymore. Hijichu's icy expression appeared at the door of the detention room. He held a shiny silver gun in his hand, the black muzzle pointed at the old police officer's wrist. The old police officer turned around and froze. He slowly raised his hands in surrender and said, "It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? Hijichu raised his phone with his other hand. I already took pictures of what you just did. I can send you to prison for a few hundred years if I want to. American criminal law liked to add up the sentences of various crimes, so it was common for a criminal to be sentenced to a few hundred years in prison. The old police officer was so scared that sweat broke out on his forehead. I just wanted to look at her wound. I didn't mean anything else. Didn't mean anything else? You handcuffed her like this just to look at her wound? Hijichu raised his gun and walked over step by step. Lean against the wall, squat down and put your hands on your head. If you dare move, I'll blow your head off. Gunyenji looked at Hijichu in shock. Her lips quivered, but she didn't say anything. She closed her eyes and pretended to faint. Hijichu turned around to see that Gunyenji had fainted, and couldn't help smiling. He muttered to himself, "At least she's not that stupid." As he spoke, he asked the old police officer for the key to unlock Gunyenji's handcuffs. He carried her horizontally and walked out of the detention room. The lawyers who had followed him left a lawyer's letter at the campus police office before leaving with Hijichu. The superintendent of the campus police who had rushed over upon hearing the news was furious. He stomped his feet and scolded his subordinates. How could you let that girl go? She injured someone the military wanted to protect. How could she not take responsibility? Superintendent? This is the lawyer's letter left by the professor. Please take a look. The fat black female officer timidly pushed the lawyer's letter to Hijichu's subordinates. The superintendent opened it and glanced at it. His face flushed and then paled. After a long moment of embarrassment, he said, "I'll send this to the military. We've tried our best. If they don't want to let that student go, then they'll have to do it themselves." Hijichu carried Gunyenji into his Lamborghini and placed her in the passenger seat. He fastened her seatbelt and went around to the other side to start the car. The motorcade then drove to the Harvard Medical School affiliated hospital. The injuries on Gunyenji's face required a doctor's certificate. As soon as they arrived at the Harvard Medical School affiliated hospital, Hijichu's phone received a call from the U.S. military. "Professor He, please hand over Gunyenji. She injured one of our people and must take legal responsibility. Lieutenant Colonel Peter, since you're being so aggressive, we'll see you in court." Hijichu hung up without hesitation and ordered his subordinates, "Immediately sue the U.S. military for lynching my student. I'd like to see if the U.S. law or the U.S. military is more powerful." It was only a matter of minutes for a lawyer to submit a complaint to the court. 15 minutes later, Lieutenant Colonel Peter received news that Professor Hijichu from Harvard Law School had sued him and his department in the State Circuit Court. *CKU. How dare you sue me? Lieutenant Colonel Peter lost his temper, but after his subordinates informed him of Hijichu's status, he had no choice but to calm down. The military was powerful, but could he order them to directly kill Hijichu? Of course not. Before he gave the order, Hijichu would probably have already taken him to military court and locked him up for hundreds of years. Today was August 1st, Major General Hua's day. Everyone, please don't forget to vote for him. To celebrate, today was the fourth watch. This was the fourth watch. Today's fourth watch had already been completed. Good night, everyone. Also, on Monday I forgot to list the recommendation tickets. Oh, and Chapter 137. Is this Hijichu really that good? Lieutenant Colonel Peter looked at Hijichu's resume, still unwilling to give up. Sir, if you don't believe me, then you can do whatever you want. Why didn't you say so earlier? Fine, just give him another call. Where are you going? Why didn't you call me? Sir, you call yourself. I'm going to resign. In the emergency room of the Harvard Medical School affiliated hospital, several female doctors were urgently called out to examine Gunyenji's body. These female doctors were the more experienced doctors in the emergency room. They had a good reputation and were more skilled in their skills. They carefully examined the swelling on Gunyenji's face and her body to make sure there were no bruises, no fractures or internal injuries. Finally, one of the female doctors wrote out a form for Hijichu to take Gunyenji for a blood test. Blood test? Hijichu froze and quickly glanced at Gunyenji. Why do we need a blood test? Is there something wrong with it? It's a routine test, but it's fine if you don't want to. You'll be fine if you don't have a high fever or faint after 36 hours of observation. The female doctor had only requested a blood test after seeing Hijichu's reaction. Blood tests were usually required for major checkups. Hijichu pushed the form back. That's not necessary, just give me a proof of injury. This was a reasonable request, so the female doctor didn't refuse. She quickly printed out a proof of injury and signed her name. Gunyenji kept her eyes closed the entire time, only fluttering her eyelashes to show that she was awake. After a flurry of activity, Hijichu finally brought her back to his detached house by the lake at around 4 in the afternoon. It was Gunyenji's first time at Hijichu's house, so she couldn't help looking around curiously. The house was very large, and the lawn in front and behind the house was probably 2 or 3 acres. Further north of the lawn was a small mountain with a clear lake at the foot. The mountain was covered in green, so thick that it reflected the lake at the foot of the mountain like it was made of high-quality jade. Gunyenji covered her swollen face with an ice pack and stood in front of the French windows on the second floor. She looked out at the beautiful scenery and shook her head. Professor I didn't expect your house to be so big and in such a good location. Hijichu put his hands in his pockets and stood beside her. He looked at the scenery outside the window and was silent for a while. Only half of that mountain is mine. Gunyenji, people who flaunt their wealth are the most detestable. How could he let others live? But the entire lake is mine. Hijichu gave her a sidelong glance. Do you want to go swimming? Thanks, but I've just been injured, so it's not suitable for me to do any strenuous activities. Gunyenji placed the ice pack on the table and sighed softly. Professor thank you for helping me. You're my student. If I don't help you, who should I help? Hijichu's gaze fell on her red and swollen cheeks. His shimmering almond-shaped eyes were filled with pity, and his lips were pursed into a thin line. His nose was as straight as a sword, but there was a hint of mockery in it. Gunyenji felt that his gaze was a bit strange. She snuck a glance at him and quickly looked away. I'm sorry to have caused trouble for you, Professor Hijichu raised his arm and gently touched Gunyenji's red and swollen cheek with his finger. Gunyenji's red and burning wound felt the iciness of his finger. Almost instinctively, she turned her head away and took a step to the side to avoid Hijichu's touch. Hijichu's arm stopped in midair. His aura grew colder and colder. Even his shimmering almond-shaped eyes gradually became cold and distant. He snorted softly and put his hand back into his trouser pocket. Hijichu suddenly turned around and said coldly, Go. Your guardian is waiting for you at home. Gunyenji looked at Hijichu's back in shock. Why was this person so temperamental? She pouted and looked down to grab her baseball cap. A middle-aged Caucasian woman walked in with a smile and said to Gunyenji, Miss Gu, I am the housekeeper. This way, please. I will see you out. Gunyenji felt like she had been kicked out of the house. She composed herself and raised her head to say, "I don't need you to see me out. I will go out myself." She walked out of Hijichu's room and walked down the wide spiral staircase to the hall on the first floor, which was as big as a dance floor. She walked straight to the carved cherrywood door. The housekeeper was not angry. She followed behind her with a smile and watched her walk out of the He mansion's door before going upstairs to report to Hijichu. "Mr. He? Come in." Hijichu sat behind the desk, his hands constantly typing on the keyboard. "Miss Gu has already left." Hijichu held the mouse in his hand and clicked on the mansion's surveillance system. Gunyenji's figure appeared on his screen. She was walking alone on the grass. There were butterflies fluttering around her feet, but she was no longer stopping to catch them. Hijichu stared at the surveillance image on the screen for a long time. It was only when Gunyenji walked out of the He mansion's large iron gate in the middle of the wall that he said dryly, "All right, you can leave." The housekeeper performed a standard curtsy and walked backwards out of Hijichu's study, closing the door behind her. Gunyenji walked alone on the path. The more she walked, the more aggrieved she felt. Uncle Hua had found someone he loved and didn't want her anymore. Professor He was temperamental and ruthless. He'd kicked her out the door at the slightest disagreement. Her parents hadn't looked for her in all these years. She was destined to be a person no one wanted. Gunyenji stopped and looked back at Hijichu's detached mansion. She stomped her feet and wanted to give it the middle finger. It took a lot of effort to control herself. She didn't want anyone to see her and say she was rude. She turned around and continued walking alone. She had never been to Hijichu's home before, but she knew his address and had searched for it on a map. Now all she had to do was take out her phone to find her way back to the apartment. She took out her phone and thought of Yin Shixiang. She didn't know where he was going. She slid open her phone to call Yin Shixiang, but it showed that he was still on the phone. She bit her lip and clenched her fists. She rushed forward as if she was mad. She had been walking alone on the tree-lined path for almost an hour. Her legs were so tired she couldn't lift them. But the apartment was still quite a distance away. Should she take a break by the side of the road? Gunyenji looked up and looked around to find a place to rest. At this moment her cell phone suddenly rang. Could it be Brother Xiong? Gunyenji quickly picked up her phone and saw that it was Mei Xiaowen calling. International long-distance roaming? What was he doing? Gunyenji answered, "Hello? Class rep?" "Yenji? You're still calling me class rep? It took me a while to find you." Mei Xiaowen's relieved voice came from the phone. Gunyenji listened to the voice. Why was it getting closer? She raised her head and saw a tall and thin man holding a phone. He was smiling as he walked towards her. Why did that man look so familiar? Gunyenji stopped and narrowed her eyes. It really was Mei Xiaowen. Why was he in the United States? "Yenji, what's wrong?" Mei Xiaowen walked to her side. "Why is your face swollen?" He reached out and lifted Gunyenji's chin to examine it. "Xia Xiaowen, why are you here?" Gunyenji's voice trembled violently. She couldn't believe her eyes or her ears. When she was at her weakest, when she needed someone by her side the most, why was it Mei Xiaowen who appeared? Was this God's will? Mei Xiaowen gently brushed her hair away from her forehead. "Why am I here? Of course I missed you, so I came to see you. You heartless little thing, you forgot about me as soon as you arrived in the United States, didn't you?" He pulled Gunyenji into his arms with a slight force. This was the first update. She had been quite busy lately and couldn't write 3 updates at once. It was better to be apart. The second update would be around 1 p.m. Monthly votes and updates would be 3,000. The third update would be around 7 p.m. Early August. Asking for guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 138. Gunyenji's contact with Mei Xiaowen had decreased since she came to America. Most of the time, it was Mei Xiaowen who texted her and asked her to check out their mutual Weibo account. "Nianzi is here." Gunyenji had been so busy with the Nandu Global Satellite Navigation System that she hadn't had a good meal or a good night's sleep. How could she have the time to express her feelings on Weibo? But looking at Mei Xiaowen's focused eyes and his cheeks that were even thinner than before, Gunyenji couldn't say anything. Mei Xiaowen hugged Gunyenji and rubbed the top of her warm head. He whispered, "What happened to your face?" Gunyenji struggled out of his arms and covered her face. She pouted, "Someone hit me." "What? Who hit you? How dare they hit you? Did you call the police?" Mei Xiaowen grew serious. "I don't believe that nobody in America cares about this." Gunyenji hung her head in embarrassment. "I hit you first." Mei Xiaowen was speechless. Then they must have crossed the line. Nianji was defending herself, right? Mei Xiaowen held her shoulders and comforted her gently. He was obviously biased and was always on Gu Nianji's side. What Gu Nianji needed the most right now was this indiscriminate attitude of standing by her side. Her mood instantly improved. She smiled at Mei Xiaowen. Xiaowen, why did you come to America all of a sudden? Are you on vacation? Mei Xiaowen turned to walk with her. He draped an arm over her shoulder. I came here just to see you. Why don't you believe me? I'm so surprised I can't believe it. Gu Nianji giggled but walked slower and slower. She was even limping. Although there weren't any obvious injuries on her legs today, she had been kicked several times. Coupled with the fact that she had been walking for more than an hour, her legs were so numb that she could barely feel them. She was practically walking step by step. Mei Xiaowen sensed that she was struggling and tilted his head to look at her. He quickly walked a few steps and squatted down in front of her. Come, I'll carry you. Gu Nianji was at a loss. I am fine. Alright, you're limping, you can't walk anymore. Mei Xiaowen turned around and smiled. If I had known, I would have driven my rental car over. Where did you park the car? Gu Nianji asked curiously as she lay on his back. Mei Xiaowen slipped his arms under her calves and stood up with her on his back. Nianji, why are you so thin? Mei Xiaowen thought the girl on his back was too light. Isn't it good to lose weight? Saying that a woman has lost weight is the biggest compliment. Gu Nianji was smug. It means that I'm controlling my weight well. Mei Xiaowen couldn't help but laugh as he shook his head. He chatted casually with her as he carried her back to her apartment. We're here, Xiaowen. Thank you for bringing me back. Gu Nianji was sweating all over and very uncomfortable. She wanted to go back and take a shower first. Where do you live? Give me your phone number and address. Mei Xiaowen had wanted to pick her up for dinner. But seeing how badly injured her face was, he knew she wouldn't want to go out and embarrass herself. He regretfully took out a card from the hotel and placed it in Gu Nianji's hand. Hilton Hotel, 3rd floor, room 356. My phone number hasn't changed. You can call me. Gu Nianji nodded. I'll treat you to dinner at my place tomorrow. I'm really in a bad state today. I need to go home and clean up. Xiaowen, I'm so sorry. Don't say sorry. Mei Xiaowen patted her head. Thank goodness I came. You're alone here. Take care of yourself and don't make me worry. Gu Nianji's heart warmed at his words. She nodded profusely. I know. I'll be more careful in the future. It was an accident. Alright, I know you too well. You're weird but you're still a girl. Even though you're good with words, what if someone gets angry and starts a fight with you? You'll be in big trouble. Mei Xiaowen sighed as he patted her shoulder. Go back. I'll watch you go in. No, you go first. I'll watch you. Gu Nianji insisted on seeing Mei Xiaowen off. Mei Xiaowen couldn't dissuade her. He squeezed her hand and turned to walk to a black Buick parked in the parking lot. He turned back to wave at her before getting into the car and driving away from Gu Nianji's apartment building. Gu Nianji returned to her apartment and opened the door with her key. The apartment was quiet. Yin Shixiang wasn't in the living room. She limped in and went straight to her room. Yin Shixiang's door was tightly shut. He was standing in front of his window and talking quietly on the phone. Hua Xiao, little Zay told you already, right? What do you plan to do? Hua Xiaoheng's voice was low and thick. You said He Zhichu has already taken Nianji away? Yes, he's already taken her away. The US military refused to let Nianji go and angered He Zhichu. Later I heard He Zhichu even sued the US military. They don't dare to act rashly anymore. Yin Shixiang reported everything he had heard today. Hua Xiaoheng was silent for a moment. His voice was emotionless. Okay, we'll bide our time and observe the situation. I'll send someone to inform the consulate general and tell them to ignore it. Ha! Yin Shixiang jumped up when he heard this. He couldn't help raising his voice. No way. It's fine if you don't do anything, but how can you stop the consulate general? Nianji got into this trouble because she beat up that Xian guy. She's young and impulsive. Are you the same? Hua Xiaoheng spoke to Yin Shixiang through his Bluetooth headset. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he wrote a report to the military. You should have stopped her at the time. This is your dereliction of duty. I don't want to see this happen over and over again. If it happens again, you can go back and ask little Zay to come over. Yin Shixiang took a few deep breaths, stood up straight and said in a gruff voice, Yes, sir. Chief, please allow Lieutenant Colonel Yin Shixiang to redeem himself. Continue to protect Nianji. Okay, this is already the second time. I don't want to see it happen a third time. Hua Xiaoheng said mercilessly, You have to pay close attention to Nianji. Find out who's trying to get close to her. Investigate everyone's background, especially Hijichu. Professor He? Yin Shixiang didn't understand. He wrote on the window pane with his finger. Didn't we investigate many times already? What else is there to be unhappy about? It's because it's too flawless that it's suspicious. From his resume, he has nothing to do with Nianji. Why would he treat her so well in just a few short months? Don't tell me that every professor treats their students this well. Hua Xiaoheng closed the computer after he finished writing the report. Yin Shixiang stammered, Mr. Hua, do you think there's another reason? What reason? Hua Xiaoheng walked out as he took out a cigarette and lit it. That's right. Did Hijichu fall for Nianji? After all, Nianji is getting older and more popular. Mr. Hua, you don't know how many people like her here. Hua Xiaoheng's hand holding the lighter paused. He maintained the posture of lighting the cigarette. After a while, he calmly extinguished the lighter and said slowly, probably not. Hijichu is a professor. If he dares to do anything to Nianji, I'll ruin his reputation. Continue to observe and report back. This is the second chapter. Monthly votes of 3,000 plus chapters. The third chapter is around 7 p.m. Early August. Asking for guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Also, if you want to join the group, you can do so now. The larger group only needs to subscribe to the Major General. The book review section has a post welcoming everyone to join the Major General's group. After you reply, you just need to indicate the username of the reply when you apply. Chapter 139. Remember to vote for 2 more guaranteed monthly tickets. Remember to vote for 2 more guaranteed monthly tickets. Remember to vote for 2 more guaranteed monthly tickets. P.S. Chapter 136 of Chapter 2, I Ruined His Reputation, has been updated at 1 p.m. You can see it if you scroll forward. Chapter 140. Yes, sir. Yin Shixiang instinctively saluted, completely out of reflex. After hanging up, Yin Shixiang looked out the window. It was already past 5 p.m., so he should go pick up Gu Nianji. Therefore she called Hijichu again. Professor He? Thank you so much for today. Is Nianji better? I'll come pick her up now. No need. Hijichu spat out the words coldly. The coldness seemed to follow the phone signal all the way to Yin Shixiang. She's already gone. Gone? Yin Shixiang was shocked. When did she leave? Why didn't you send her back? She's just a little girl and she's just injured. How could you bear to do that? Why wouldn't I? What a joke. Hijichu hung up without another word. He folded his arms behind his head and leaned back in the large, soft chair. He turned the chair 180 degrees to look out the window at the scenery of the lake and mountains. His long legs rested on the windowsill as he ignored the ringing of his phone. Yin Shixiang called again, but no one picked up. He was so anxious that he didn't have time to think about why Hijichu's attitude had suddenly changed. He pushed open his room door and rushed out. But when he reached the door, he turned back again. His gaze fell on the small shoe rack by the door. On it was the pair of Under Armour Sakura sneakers Gu Nianji had worn out today. The panda print slippers she wore at home were gone. This meant that Gu Nianji had already returned. Yin Shixiang breathed a sigh of relief. It looked like Hijichu's words were reliable. Gu Nianji had indeed left his house and returned to the apartment. But he remembered that it was a full 3 miles from Hijichu's house to their apartment. He didn't know how Gu Nianji had returned by herself. Yin Shixiang walked to Gu Nianji's room door and knocked lightly. Nianji? Nianji? Are you back? Gu Nianji hugged the panda pillow and curled up behind the bay window curtains. She was completely hidden. Yin Shixiang called her a few times before she replied with a muffled, Yin Shixiang quickly opened the door. Luckily the door wasn't locked. As soon as Yin Shixiang entered, he looked around but didn't see Gu Nianji. He looked again and found Gu Nianji's panda slippers under the bay windowsill. So he was hiding on the windowsill. Yin Shixiang walked over slowly. His voice was very calm. Nianji, what's wrong? Brother Xiong, don't you want to see him anymore? As he spoke, he walked to the bay window and lifted the curtain with one hand. Gu Nianji looked up and met his eyes. Her red and swollen right cheek looked even more swollen, and her large dark eyes were like 2 mirrors that reflected her reflection. Why is the swelling worse? Yin Shixiang squatted down to keep eye level with her. Didn't Professor He take you to the hospital? Gu Nianji thought about how Hijichu had gotten all the medicine from the doctor. She couldn't help feeling even more depressed. She mumbled, "Brother Xiong, where were you when I was locked up?" In Shixiang felt a little guilty. He rolled his eyes and said seriously, "I called Professor He and asked him to save you. You know Brother Xiong isn't familiar with the United States, so he's not as capable as Professor He." Gun Yinji rolled her eyes. "So you were the one who called? I was wondering how Professor He knew." "Yeah, I called Huashao after that." In Shixiang had to explain his whereabouts, lest Gun Yinji think he didn't care about her safety. Gun Yinji's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. She looked down and buried her swollen right cheek against the panda pillow. She asked quietly, "Uncle Hua knows?" In Shixiang didn't tell the truth. "Huashao is very busy, so he doesn't know yet. Little Zay said he would tell him when Huashao gets back. But you're fine now, so you don't have to tell him anymore, right?" Gun Yinji thought about it. Her long eyelashes fluttered and she finally said dejectedly, "Forget it, don't tell him. Uncle Hua might scold me if I tell him." Instead of studying, he only knew how to play, and even got into a gang fight. Gun Yinji thought she could imagine Hua Xiaoheng's stern, solemn expression, and perhaps a look of deep disappointment in his eyes. In Shixiang raised an eyebrow and sat next to her. He patted her shoulder and comforted her. "Yinji, tell me the truth. When has Hua Xiao ever scolded you?" Gun Yinji was speechless. "He doesn't talk most of the time." In Shixiang chuckled. Gun Yinji was furious. She pushed In Shixiang, her eyes red. "Brother Xiong, you're adding fuel to the fire. I'm already very upset and you're still talking about it." Fine, I was just joking. I was just teasing you." In Shixiang carried her down. "Here, I have some top-notch ointment. Apply it on your face. I guarantee the swelling won't be visible by tomorrow." "Really?" Gun Yinji looked at In Shixiang suspiciously. "There's such a good ointment?" "The famous improved green ointment, an ancient Huaxia medicine formula, made by Chen Lai. You deserve it." In Shixiang dragged Gun Yinji to his room and rummaged through his drawers for the improved green ointment, which could treat soft tissue bruises. He carefully applied it on Gun Yinji. As soon as the ointment touched her face, Gun Yinji felt a penetrating coolness seep into her skin. The burning sensation immediately subsided. This was definitely much better than the Western medicine prescribed by American emergency room doctors. Gun Yinji also believed that ancient Huaxia medicine was definitely better for the skin. She felt much better. She took the improved green ointment from In Shixiang and asked, "Do you have any ointment for muscle soreness?" "I walked for an hour today. My legs are about to break." "You walked for an hour?" In Shixiang was shocked. "When did you walk for an hour? Doesn't Professor He drive a Lamborghini? Why would he let you walk?" Gun Yinji became angry at the mention of Hijichu. She pouted unhappily. "Professor He kicked me out and didn't send me a car. I walked back alone." "What?" In Shixiang jumped 3 feet into the air and almost flew into a rage. He roared, "He made a seriously injured little girl like you walk for more than an hour?" Yes. Gun Yinji nodded. "Isn't that too much?" "It really is too much." In Shixiang punched the wall. He was deeply ashamed of what he had just said to Hua Xiaoheng. He took back his words. He didn't believe that Hijichu had taken a liking to Gun Yinji. As long as a man loved a woman, how could he bear to let her suffer like this? Besides, Gun Yinji was still injured. "No, I have to call him. This kind of thing has to be explained clearly. What if something happens to you? Can he afford to compensate you?" In Shixiang kept calling Hijichu's number in his anger. Hijichu was annoyed and finally blocked In Shixiang's number. Gun Yinji grabbed In Shixiang's hand and shook it. "Brother Xiong, stop calling. I'll tell you something. I met someone on the way back. Can you guess who it was?" "How would I guess? There are so many people in this world. You've really tested me." In Shixiang panted heavily as he suppressed the anger in his heart. Gun Yinji giggled as she got him a drink. "It was our university class rep, Mei Xiaowen. It was the 3rd watch. It was the beginning of August. Were there no more guaranteed monthly votes?" Asking for guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Also, if you wanted to join the group, you could do so now. The larger group only needed to subscribe to the Major General. There was a post in the book review section welcoming everyone to the Major General's group. After the relatives replied, they only needed to specify the username of the reply when they applied. Oh, and oh. Chapter 141. Mei Xiaowen? He's in America? And you met him? In Shixiang took a sip of his drink. His anger towards Hijichu subsided slightly as the cold drink entered his mouth, but Mei Xiaowen's message quickly grabbed his attention again. How could it be such a coincidence? A chance encounter? America was so big, what were the chances of two old classmates running into each other? Gu Nianji sensed Yin Shixiang's resistance and dissatisfaction towards Mei Xiaowen. She quickly blinked her large, heavily lashed eyes at him and grabbed his arm. She said softly, "It wasn't a coincidence. I keep in touch with Xiaowen via text, and I gave him my address so it wasn't hard for him to find me. He's really nice to me, and when I couldn't walk anymore he carried me back." Yin Shixiang snorted and deliberately ignored Gu Nianji's fawning smile. He crossed his arms and looked up. "Even if he knew the address, he should have come to the apartment to find you, right? But he ran into you on the way. What's the meaning of that? He even carried you on his back. He's obviously trying to get on your good side." Could it be that Mei Xiaowen also had some ulterior motives? Yin Shixiang was infected by Hua Xiaoheng and couldn't help but think of conspiracy theories. Gu Nianji could hear Yin Shixiang's underlying meaning and couldn't help laughing. "Brother Xiong, what are you thinking? Xiaowen's phone can locate my phone. He can find me as soon as he turns on the search function." Mei Xiaowen must have turned on the tracking function to see if she was home as soon as he arrived at Gu Nianji's apartment, but she wasn't there. He followed the location provided by the phone and happened to run into Gu Nianji, whose legs were numb from walking. Yin Shixiang slapped his forehead. "No, his phone can't have this function. I have to think of a way to get him to delete it." He then warned Gu Nianji, "You have to be careful too. Why did you let him locate your phone? Did he give birth to you or raise you? You heartless little thing, you don't want us now that you have a boyfriend?" Gu Nianji had been called heartless twice today, and her heart was filled with mixed emotions. She hung her head beside Yin Shixiang and muttered, "You guys don't want me anymore. Why are you blaming me for being heartless? Oh, who doesn't want you?" Yin Shixiang rolled up his sleeves to make Gu Nianji laugh. "Tell me Big Xiong will challenge him to a duel." Gu Nianji looked up and smiled. "Are you really going to challenge him to a duel?" "Of course. The number of people in this world that your brother Xiong can't beat can be counted on 5 fingers. Can you beat Uncle Hua?" "It's too difficult. Let's try another one." "Bah." Gu Nianji gave Yin Shixiang a shove. "I knew you couldn't beat Uncle Hua, so don't brag in front of me. Go and make me supper, I'm starving." Okay. I bought prawns and fresh scallops. I can make garlic prawns and dry baked garlic scallops." Yin Shixiang dragged Gu Nianji to the kitchen with him. He wanted to add more garlic flavor to Gu Nianji to prevent those lascivious men from shamelessly trying to get close to her. "Tell me, why does Hua Xiao not want you?" "He has a girlfriend. He'll get married and have kids in the future. Of course he won't have time for me." Gu Nianji sighed and struggled out of Yin Shixiang's hand. She wrinkled her nose. "I'm not going to the kitchen. You go make dinner and call me when you're done." Yin Shixiang saw her swollen face and softened. "Okay, go take a shower and rest. I'll call you when I'm done." Gu Nianji nodded and watched Yin Shixiang leave. She grabbed her clothes and went to the bathroom to take a bath. Yin Shixiang's dinner was ready by the time she came out of the shower. The two of them sat across from each other and ate a sumptuous dinner. Gu Nianji paced back and forth in the room to digest her food. She thought about calling Mei Xiaowen to confirm the time to invite him to dinner the next day. She called, but Mei Xiaowen's line was busy. He was on the phone. Maybe he was talking to his family. Gu Nianji hung up and didn't continue the call. Mei Xiaowen was indeed on the phone, but he wasn't calling his family. Jiang Hongcha was calling him from the Wuxia Empire. "Xiaowen, why did you go to the United States without telling me?" Jiang Hongcha's voice was like fine satin, soft and lustrous. "I miss you." Mei Xiaowen was silent for a long time. Finally, when Jiang Hongcha pressed him, he said, "Hongcha, I have a girlfriend." "You're really pregnant? Who is it? Is it the little girl you chased to the United States to see?" Jiang Hongcha asked gently. "Xiaowen, don't be so hard on me, okay?" Mei Xiaowen wanted to say something but stopped. "Xiaowen, I know there's a barrier in your heart that you can't overcome. I won't say anything, but you haven't been to Black Tea Sky in a long time, right? I've been writing some stuff recently. Go read it when you have time. I've sent the password to your phone." Jiang Hongcha hung up. Mei Xiaowen hesitated for a long time, then unlocked his phone and logged on to Weibo. Yin Shixiang put the dishes in the dishwasher and returned to his room to report the latest news to Hua Xiaoheng. This time he actually got through to Hua Xiaoheng. "Hua Xiao, not asleep yet? Or is he already up?" It should be 7 o'clock in the Wuxia Empire now, and he had just spoken to Hua Xiaoheng 2 hours ago at 5 o'clock in the Wuxia Empire. Hua Xiaoheng hadn't slept all night, but he wasn't sleepy. He was very busy with work and often didn't sleep for days on end. Tell me what's up. Hua Xiaoheng put on his headphones and closed his eyes. He leaned back on the high-back chair and considered it a good night's rest. Yin Shixiang looked out the door and whispered. He Jichu chased Nianji back. I don't know what Nianji did to piss him off, but he made her walk back alone. It was a 3-mile walk and she took an hour. Hua Xiaoheng shook his head nonchalantly. A 3-mile walk took an hour? You should make sure Nianji continues her morning exercise. She can't fall behind in the 10-kilometer cross-country run. Yin Shixiang was speechless. Hua Xiao, you're focusing on the wrong thing. But he didn't have the guts to argue with Hua Xiaoheng. He chuckled and said, Mei Xiaowen is here, apparently to see Nianji. Hua Xiaoheng didn't open his eyes. He rubbed his forehead and asked nonchalantly, why did he go to the United States? Did he see Nianji? He saw her. That kid was lucky. He chased Nianji back by Hijichu and met her halfway. He even carried her on his back for a while. Yin Shixiang reported everything related to Gu Nianji to Hua Xiaoheng. You good for nothing. Tell Nianji she can't even walk 3 miles. Don't tell her she grew up with me. Yin Shixiang felt that Hua Xiaoheng was being too harsh. Hua Xiao, Nianji was seriously injured today. Did you forget? She's physically and mentally injured. Can't you call her to comfort her? This was the main reason he called Hua Xiaoheng again today. Gu Nianji had just said pitifully that Hua Xiaoheng didn't want her anymore. Yin Shixiang trembled when he heard it. What a pitiful little girl. The aggrieved look in her eyes was like that of a kitten abandoned on the streets. Hua Xiaoheng opened his eyes and opened the computer's protective screen. He entered the password as he grunted. Is the injury serious? Didn't you say there was Hijichu? Hijichu washed his hands of her. You can't just ignore her. Yin Shixiang mustered his courage. Even if you have a girlfriend, you can't ignore Nianji. Hua Xiaoheng's hand paused. He keenly sensed something was wrong from Yin Shixiang's tone. This didn't sound like something Yin Shixiang would say. He narrowed his dark eyes. His expression was unreadable, but the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Hua Xiaoheng quickly calmed down. He said dryly, then tell Nianji that I don't have a girlfriend. I won't ignore her. He hung up and sighed deeply. He got up to go for a 10 kilometers cross-country run. This was the first watch. The second watch was around 1 p.m. Monthly votes of 3,100 plus updates. The third watch was around 7 p.m. Early August. Monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 142. Yin Shixiang froze when he heard this, then realized what was going on. So Mr. Hua had already figured out that it was Nianji who said it? This kind of thinking, TSK, no wonder he and Ozawa could only be his personal secretary. Truly, comparing oneself to others is infuriating. Yin Shixiang tossed his phone onto the bed and went to Gu Nianji's room to talk to her. He didn't expect her to have already fallen asleep on the bed. Her swollen cheek was facing up, and the corners of her mouth were scrunched up. Her brows were furrowed, and she seemed to be in pain even in her sleep. It had been a long day for her. Yin Shixiang's heart ached, and he cursed Hijichu inwardly as he covered her with a thin blanket. He turned off the lights, closed the door quietly and went back to his room. Mei Xiaowen finished reading the latest Weibo post, Black Tea Sky, in his hotel room. He couldn't help but call Jiang Hongcha. It was morning in the Wuxia Empire. Jiang Hongcha sat at the breakfast table and unlocked her phone. She smiled. Xiaowen, have you had dinner? It was past 7 in the evening in the United States. I've eaten. Mei Xiaowen held the phone in one hand and ran his fingers through his hair in frustration. Hongcha, I have a girlfriend. He said the same thing as if trying to hypnotize himself. This was his only trump card against Jiang Hongcha's charms. Jiang Hongcha's smile didn't waver. She held the phone for a moment, then said, You really have a girlfriend? She admitted she's your girlfriend? Mei Xiaowen sat up straight. What do you mean? Don't look down on me. I'm not looking down on you. Jiang Hongcha smiled. Weinan said a few days ago that your revolution hasn't succeeded yet, and that you still need to work hard, comrade? Actually, AI Weinan had told Jiang Hongcha that the girl Mei Xiaowen was courting didn't actually like him. Of course, Jiang Hongcha wouldn't tell Mei Xiaowen that. Men cared about their pride. If they lost their pride, there would be nothing left between them. Mei Xiaowen breathed a sigh of relief. He picked up the remote and turned on the TV to watch a movie on HBO. He said, Weinan is full of nonsense, don't listen to her. I'm not listening to her. Jiang Hongcha's tone suddenly became serious. I just wanted to confirm if you really have a girlfriend. Really? So what if it's fake? If it's fake, then it's fine. But if it's true, I'll have to keep my distance from you. Jiang Hongcha's voice was as smooth as silk, but there was a hint of determination in it. Mei Xiaowen stared at the TV, completely unaware of what was going on. He muttered, "Keep your distance? You want to keep your distance from me?" "Yes. I can't be like Weinan. I know you like someone else, but I still insist on staying by your side as a friend." Jiang Hongcha picked up the kettle and sprinkled water on her epiphyllum. "I've never been that kind of person. You know about it?" Mei Xiaowen was surprised. When they were dating in high school, Ai Weinan stayed by their side as a good friend. "Of course I know. Do you think I'm stupid?" Jiang Hongcha chuckled as she put down the watering can. She stroked the epiphyllum's leaves and placed a rainflower stone in the pot. "So you don't mind?" Mei Xiaowen thought of their first love in high school and all their firsts. His heart softened. Jiang Hongcha was obviously thinking of their first love. Her voice was even sweeter. "Of course not. Why would I mind? You don't even like her. Just let her stay by your side." Her witty and generous words had a double meaning, and Mei Xiaowen's heart went numb. He couldn't resist it at all. As expected, the only person who could affect his emotions the most, the one who was most in tune with him, was Jiang Hongcha. However, when he thought of Jiang Hongcha's foreign boyfriend, Mei Xiaowen felt uneasy. He suppressed the restlessness in his heart and said carefully, "I'm sleepy. I'm jet-lagged. I'm going to take a shower. I'll call you tomorrow." He hung up. Jiang Hongcha stared at her phone. She couldn't believe that Mei Xiaowen had hung up on her. When had Mei Xiaowen ever hung up on her in all their years of dating? It looked like Gu Nianji really was special to Mei Xiaowen. Jiang Hongcha was terrified for the first time. How could there be so many people who wouldn't give up until the bitter end? They just hadn't met a better one yet. Once they did, they would fall in love with the new. Jiang Hongcha was scared. She was worried that Mei Xiaowen would really end up with Gu Nianji. Anxious, she dialed Ai Weinan's number. She had been away all these years and Ai Weinan had been by Mei Xiaowen's side. She should know everything about him, right? Gu Nianji woke up the next day to find that her swollen cheeks had completely gone back to normal. There were only a few red marks left, like red veins under her fair skin. They should be completely gone in a few days. She held the bottle of improved green ointment that Yin Shixiang had given her. She wanted to give it a thumbs up. It was so useful. Brother Xiong must have gotten it from Uncle Hua. She would ask him to stock up on it when she got home. Yes, and Uncle Hua had promised to pick out some black t-shirts for pajamas when she got home. She couldn't forget. Even if he already had a girlfriend by then, she would still remind him to keep his word. Gu Nianji pursed her lips and recorded these two things in her phone's notepad. The date of the reminder was set to be the day she returned to the Empire in 6 months. It should be the day before Christmas. She cleaned herself up and changed into a polo and denim shorts. She said to Yin Shixiang, "Brother Xiong, I'm inviting Mei Xiaowen here for dinner today. What do you think we should cook?" Yin Shixiang realized that he really had become Gu Nianji's cook. He couldn't help feeling depressed. After a while he said, "Let's eat out. We'll find a good restaurant and eat something classy." She could also claim the cost of eating out. This was a great idea. Yin Shixiang couldn't help but silently praise himself for his own ingenuity. Gu Nianji thought about it and agreed. The most important thing was that the bruises on her face had healed a lot. She would be able to hide them with a little concealer when they went out. "Okay, Brother Xiong, help me book a place. I'll call Xiaowen." She hummed as she walked away. She seemed to be in a better mood. Yin Shixiang looked at Gu Nianji's back and blinked. He looked down to look for a restaurant on his phone. He wasn't familiar with the restaurants around here. However, he believed that expensive food might not be delicious, but it must be classy. He booked the most expensive restaurant in the area for dinner. In the afternoon, Mei Xiaowen arrived at their apartment. He spoke politely with Yin Shixiang for a while before going to Gu Nianji's room. Mei Xiaowen casually glanced at the decorations in Gu Nianji's room. He asked, "This apartment is pretty nice. Did your relatives pay for it?" Gu Nianji originally wanted to say that he Jichu paid for it. However, she remembered his bad attitude the other day. She didn't want to give him any face in front of her classmates. She only smiled and didn't deny it. Mei Xiaowen knew what was going on. He took 2 steps forward and held Gu Nianji's hand. He whispered, "Nianji, promise me you'll be my girlfriend, okay?" This is the second update. Monthly votes of 3,100 plus updates. The third update is around 7 p.m. Early August. Asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. P.S. I didn't expect everyone to be so enthusiastic about joining the group. I'm very touched. Thank you for enjoying this article. The group was Q****Q group, Q***Q group. It was not a WeChat group. There was no WeChat group for now. The book group ID of the Major General of Cambrian was 146941331, and there was a post on the top of the group in the book review section. You just needed to reply and you could apply for it. In 2 days there will be an activity in the group. I hope to see everyone there and play with everyone. Mwah. Chapter 143. Mei Xiaowen's palms were sweaty and even slightly trembling. Gunyanji could feel how nervous he was. Looking up at his gentle face and the hopeful eyes behind the gold-rimmed glasses, she felt warm and touched. So it wasn't that no one wanted her. So there were people who wanted her. The corners of Gunyanji's lips slowly curled up into a crescent shape, and her red lips curved into a seductive arc. Mei Xiaowen's heart pounded as he instinctively wrapped his arms around her waist and lowered his head to kiss her lips. Don't. Gunyanji quickly pushed him away and took 2 steps back, blushing. Don't be like this. Mei Xiaowen's breathing was a bit unstable as he looked at Gunyanji's half-lowered head, revealing the fair nape of her neck. He wanted to touch it. He took a step forward and Gunyanji took 2 more steps back, almost touching the windowsill. You don't want to be my girlfriend? I really like you. Mei Xiaowen was hurt. He had pursued Gunyanji for so long and didn't expect this to happen. Xiaowen, you really want me to be your girlfriend? Gunyanji glanced at Mei Xiaowen. Then can you agree to one condition? What condition? I'll definitely agree. Mei Xiaowen's mood instantly improved. He looked at Gunyanji with joy in his eyes. Gunyanji smiled and tilted her head. Wait for me for half a year. If you don't change your mind in the next 6 months, I'll be your girlfriend when I come back at the end of the year. What do you think? Gunyanji said this because she remembered Ai Weinan saying that Mei Xiaowen's first love had broken up because they were in a different place. Gunyanji had to stay in the United States for half a year and was in a different place from Mei Xiaowen. She wasn't sure if they could get past this hurdle. Mei Xiaowen was slightly taken aback. He clearly didn't expect Gunyanji to still refuse to be his girlfriend even after he had pursued her all the way to the United States. However, he had to admit that unlike before, Gunyanji had given him a clear answer this time. As long as he waited until the end of the year, she could be his girlfriend if he wanted. Thinking about it this way, he actually had the initiative in his hands. Mei Xiaowen quickly accepted Gunyanji's proposal. Okay, I'll wait for you. I'll pick you up at the airport on the day you return half a year later. Although there were still many uncertainties, Gunyanji's heart skipped a beat when she heard what he said. Will you really pick me up? If you're still this good to me in 6 months, I'll be your girlfriend. Mei Xiaowen was satisfied and pulled her into his arms for a hug. Yin Shixiang called out from outside the door. It's getting late, isn't it time to eat? Gunyanji pushed him away. I'll take you out for dinner. Mei Xiaowen smiled and took her hand, walking out with her. Yin Shixiang looked at them coldly from the door. What are you doing in the house? So long? No, I was just chatting with Nianji. Mei Xiaowen smiled widely. He was in a much better mood than before. Gunyanji didn't hide anything from Yin Shixiang. She said openly, Xiaowen and I talked about it. He will wait for me for half a year. After half a year, I will return to China. If he is still willing, I will be his girlfriend. Really? Congratulations in advance then. Yin Shixiang looked at Gunyanji, then at Mei Xiaowen. He obviously didn't think it was a big deal. He laughed. This is great news. Come on, let's go celebrate. The 3 of them got into Yin Shixiang's car and drove to the restaurant. It was the most expensive restaurant within 50 miles. The cars in the parking lot were all luxury cars. Yin Shixiang's second-hand SUV stood out like a sore thumb. Mei Xiaowen felt a bit embarrassed. He should have just driven his car. It was more reliable than the second-hand SUV. Gunyanji didn't think it was inappropriate. She happily got out of the car and hooked one arm around Yin Shixiang's and the other around Mei Xiaowen's. The 3 of them chatted and laughed as they entered the restaurant. They didn't expect to find a room full of people waiting at the entrance. Gunyanji asked Yin Shixiang in surprise, Brother Xiong, didn't you make a reservation? I did make a reservation, Wang Yao said. Yin Shixiang went to ask and returned with a wry smile. It's like this. I can't guarantee it'll be on time. The people who made the reservation can only go in after they finish eating. It was a restaurant after all. They couldn't just force people to eat for an hour before kicking them out. What if they ate a lot? They couldn't just run a business, right? They had no choice but to wait in the lobby with the others. In Shixiang held his phone and sat on a bench in the corner, bored. He was playing games. Gun Yanji and Mei Xiaowen stood next to a large potted plant beside the entrance and whispered. They talked about where their classmates had gone after graduation and what happened in college. They had a great time and didn't feel bored at all. However, after waiting for almost an hour, Gun Yanji's legs were sore again. Mei Xiaowen held her arm. Let's go find a seat over there. Gun Yanji nodded and followed him inside. At that moment, the restaurant doors opened again. 2 managers and a senior manager hurried over. They stood by the door and bowed. Welcome, welcome. The senior manager had just been ignoring the waiting customers, but in the blink of an eye, he was bowing to someone else. Gun Yanji didn't know which important person had come. Gun Yanji pouted, her eyes filled with undisguised disdain. She turned her head to sneak a peek. She ended up meeting a pair of cold, sultry eyes. Gun Yanji's cheeks immediately burned. Even her concealer couldn't hide the sudden blush on her face. Mei Xiaowen also turned to look and froze. Standing at the entrance was a tall, handsome man. It was Professor He Zhichu, whom he had met a few times at C University. In the crook of Professor He's arm was a beautiful woman. Americans might not be familiar with the woman's appearance, but Mei Xiaowen and Gun Yanji had no choice but to recognize her. She was obviously the fastest rising female celebrity in the Wuxia Empire in recent years. This way please. We've prepared a special VIP room for you. The senior manager's smile was almost obsequious. Gun Yanji thought about how she had been waiting for almost an hour and still hadn't gotten a table. As soon as He Zhichu arrived, the restaurant's senior manager appeared and prepared a VIP room for him. This man couldn't stop putting on airs no matter where he went. Gun Yanji turned her head and avoided He Zhichu's gaze. It was as if she didn't know him. She thought He Zhichu probably didn't want students to see him dating a female celebrity, so it was best for her to pretend to be blind. He Zhichu ignored her and didn't even look at Mei Xiaowen. He held the female celebrity's arm and walked past Gun Yanji to follow the restaurant manager to the VIP room. Mei Xiaowen quietly asked Gun Yanji, "Is that really Professor He? I didn't think he was that good to be dating a female celebrity of that caliber." She was a genuine female celebrity who had won an international award. She wasn't someone who could be compared to an 18-line, all-faced internet celebrity. Who knows? He's obviously a playboy. Gun Yanji thought He Zhichu had already fallen for her, so she secretly gossiped about him behind his back. He Zhichu's almond-shaped eyes were indeed quite attractive. Unexpectedly, as soon as Gun Yanji finished speaking, 2 coughs came from behind them. It sounded like He Zhichu's voice. Gun Yanji's back stiffened. "Students, how long have you been waiting?" He Zhichu's cool voice drilled into Gun Yanji's ears like a thread of ice. It was the 3rd watch. Beginning of August. Seeking monthly votes and recommendation votes. P.S. I didn't expect everyone to be so enthusiastic about joining the group. I'm very touched. Thank you for enjoying this article. The group was Q******Q group. It was not a WeChat group. There was no WeChat group for now. The book group ID of the Major General of Cambrian was 146941331, and there was a post on the top of the group in the book review section. You just needed to reply and you could apply for it. In 2 days there will be an activity in the group. I hope to see everyone there and play with everyone. Mwah. Oh, __. Oh. Chapter 144. Gun Yanji and Mei Xiaowen couldn't pretend they hadn't seen it since he'd said classmate. They both turned to face He Zhichu. He Zhichu was dressed in light-colored casual wear, his hands in his trouser pockets. His eyes lingered on Gun Yanji and Mei Xiaowen's intertwined hands for a moment. There was no harm without comparison. Mei Xiaowen had always been a male idol in girls' eyes, but in front of He Zhichu, who was mature and elegant, he was just a big boy who didn't know what to do. Standing in front of He Zhichu, Mei Xiaowen felt uncomfortable for the first time. But He Zhichu wasn't looking at him, he was looking at Gun Yanji, his eyes lingering on her injured cheek. "Let's go together. My place is big." He was inviting them to the VIP room for dinner. In Shixiang, who was playing games on a nearby bench, saw He Zhichu follow them. His heart skipped a beat. He quickly put away his phone and walked over. He heard Gun Yanji reject He Zhichu's offer. "That's not a good idea, is it? This is Professor He's private time, we wouldn't dare disturb him." As she spoke, she glanced meaningfully at the female celebrity and smiled at He Zhichu. She winked and said, "Professor He, hurry up and go. Don't keep them waiting." He Zhichu studied Gun Yanji for a moment, then suddenly reached out and tousled her hair. He said in a doting tone, "You're still mad at me? I apologize, can you forgive me?" This sudden change in tone not only struck Gu Nianji like she'd been struck by lightning, but it also made Mei Xiaowen and Yin Shixiang's jaws drop. Mei Xiaowen looked at Gu Nianji suspiciously, then at He Jichu, wondering since when was Nianji so close to Professor He? And what did Professor He do to have to personally apologize to Gu Nianji? Yin Shixiang immediately took 2 steps forward to stand next to Gu Nianji. He smiled and tried to smooth things over. "Professor He, you're too kind. Our Nianji is kind and innocent. She never holds grudges. Please don't make things difficult for her." "Really?" He Jichu looked at Gu Nianji, his shimmering, sultry eyes filled with countless emotions, finally condensing into one sentence, "Can you forgive me?" Gu Nianji guessed that He Jichu was apologizing for kicking her out of his house the day before. She had been very angry the day before and had walked so hard that her legs were about to break. She had cursed He Jichu countless times in her heart. But when she woke up this morning she was no longer angry. Moreover, she wasn't someone who didn't know what was important. The scene of He Jichu rushing to the campus police office to save her was still vivid in her mind. How could she hold a grudge against him over something so trivial? Although he had gone overboard yesterday, she had secretly scolded him in her heart, so they were even. Gu Nianji didn't hold a grudge. She usually took revenge on the spot. "You're too kind, Professor He. I haven't thanked you properly yet. If you hadn't arrived in time, I wouldn't have been able to sit here and wait for my meal." Gu Nianji smiled. Her curvy lips were bright red, and her soft texture was simply tempting. He Jichu's gaze moved away from her red lips. "That's good." He didn't insist that Gu Nianji and the others eat with him in the VIP room. Instead, he called the restaurant's senior manager over and whispered a few words in his ear in French. The senior manager nodded repeatedly and turned to Gu Nianji and the others in English. "Please follow me. There's a table for 3 over there. I just got someone to add it." This was probably because of He Jichu. Gu Nianji nodded to He Jichu with a smile. "Thank you, Professor He." She quickly followed the senior manager to find a table. Mei Xiaowen also nodded to He Jichu. "Professor He will be going then." He Jichu grunted in acknowledgement. He watched as the 2 of them went after Gu Nianji before turning to go to the VIP room. "Lawyer He, were those 2 your students?" The female celebrity asked curiously. The young girl just now was too attractive. The female celebrity was also famous for her beauty, but she didn't have the slightest advantage in front of this young girl who hadn't even grown up yet. It wasn't that the young girl was prettier than her. No matter how beautiful an unripe fruit was, it wasn't as alluring as a ripe fruit. However, there was an irresistible allure within the unripe fruit. This was no ordinary fruit. He Jichu grunted and picked up the menu to order. He didn't seem to want to discuss the matter any further. However, the female celebrity couldn't help herself. She wasn't sure what position the young girl held in He Jichu's heart. She picked up the menu and looked at it a few times. She asked tentatively, "That young girl is very starstruck. If she plans to enter the entertainment industry, I can help her." As she spoke, she took out her business card from her handbag and pushed it towards He Jichu. She wanted to leave her phone number discreetly. He Jichu looked at her business card and snorted. He looked up at the female celebrity and didn't say anything. However, his shimmering, sultry eyes were filled with obvious mockery. It was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. The female celebrity's pretty face gradually turned red under his stare. Then it turned pale and finally turned livid. She was also a famous person with status. She was naturally arrogant, so most people wouldn't be able to invite her. She stiffly took back her business card and put it back into her handbag. She stood up and said, "I just remembered that I have an appointment tomorrow. I can't accompany you today. Lawyer He, regarding the contract, you can have your assistant, Miss Wen, contact my manager." The female celebrity put on a pair of sunglasses that covered half her face. She lowered her head and hurried out of the restaurant. The waiter in the VIP room bowed and asked, "Mr. E, do you still want to order?" He Jichu leaned back and rested one arm on the back of the chair. He looked through the open door and happened to see Gu Nianji and the others at the makeshift table. The 3 of them sat around a small round table and were eating happily. Gu Nianji's guardian said something, but Gu Nianji was laughing so hard she almost collapsed on the round table. The moment she looked up, Gu Nianji saw He Jichu sitting alone in the VIP room across from her. The door was wide open and the room was illuminated by the lights. Everything was resplendent. He Jichu, however, sat there ramrod straight. He was like a pale ink and a sense of desolation washed over her. Hijichu raised his glass to Gunyenji from afar. Gunyenji pursed her lips and raised her glass to Hijichu's. In Shixiang saw this and turned to look. He said in surprise, "Huh? Where's his female companion?" Gunyenji shook her head. "I don't know. I don't know what she's up to." The waiter who was taking care of their table said quietly, "Mr. He's female companion just left to attend to something." As soon as he finished speaking, Hijichu had already stood up and walked out of the lavishly decorated VIP room. He came to Gunyenji's table. He patted Mei Xiaowen's shoulder. "It's late, I have something to attend to. I'll take you out tomorrow." As he spoke, he left a business card for Mei Xiaowen and nodded at In Shixiang. He didn't even look at Gunyenji as he turned to leave. Mei Xiaowen was ecstatic. He held up Hijichu's business card and said to Gunyenji, "Nyenji, this is Professor He's personal business card. Normal people can't get a business card like this." Gunyenji was also happy. She chuckled. "Then go to bed early tonight. I don't know where I'll take you tomorrow." She then pretended to be jealous. "Professor He has never taken me and Brother Huang out before. Xiaowen, Professor He seems to have taken a liking to you." Mei Xiaowen laughed. "How could that be? But I'm quite surprised that Professor He remembered my name." This was the first watch. The second watch was around 1 p.m. Monthly votes for 3,200 plus updates. The third watch was around 7 p.m. Early August. Monthly votes and recommendation votes. Oh, intersection. Oh. Chapter 145. The next morning, Mei Xiaowen got a call from Hijichu as soon as he woke up. "Good morning, Professor He." Mei Xiaowen quickly greeted him. "Are we going out now?" Hijichu's cool voice sounded over the phone. "Come down in half an hour, I'll send a car to pick you up." Mei Xiaowen came down half an hour later to see a Cadillac limousine parked in front of the Hilton Hotel. Seeing him come down, a handsome Caucasian male driver wearing white gloves opened the door and got out. He helped him open the door on the other side and invited him in. Mei Xiaowen thanked him and entered the car to see Hijichu sitting in the passenger seat. He smiled at him. "You're too kind, Professor He." Mei Xiaowen was flattered. He even had a chauffeur. Professor He suddenly looked like a partner of a big law firm. Hijichu opened the small fridge in the car and took out a glass of red wine. "Want a drink?" Drinking red wine so early in the morning? Although Mei Xiaowen didn't have this habit, he still accepted it so Hijichu wouldn't look down on him. "I don't have the habit of eating breakfast, so I usually have a glass of red wine with ice in the morning." Hijichu raised his glass to Mei Xiaowen before downing it. Mei Xiaowen also took a drink. There was ice in the red wine so it tasted cold and had a hint of lemon. It was more like a cocktail. Hijichu poured him another glass. The limousine didn't feel like it was moving at all. Mei Xiaowen downed 4 or 5 glasses of red wine in a row before realizing they were already on the road. Feeling slightly dizzy, Mei Xiaowen held the glass and couldn't focus. Professor He, where are we going?" Although Hijichu had drunk a lot, he wasn't drunk at all. His expression was cold as he looked out the window. "We're going to pick up Nyenji. Isn't she your girlfriend? Don't you want to hang out with her?" Mei Xiaowen grunted as he rubbed his temples and leaned back in his seat, completely drunk. He chuckled. "Girlfriend? Just a little bit more. I've always wanted her to be my girlfriend, but she wants me to wait for her. You want to test me for half a year before you agree to be my girlfriend?" Hijichu withdrew his gaze in surprise and looked Mei Xiaowen up and down, as if he was trying to determine if he was telling the truth. "It's not that different, is it? They're holding hands in front of everyone. It's just holding hands." Mei Xiaowen was drunk and talkative. He couldn't help but complain, "I can't even hug her. She pushes me away all the time. She's probably the only virgin in our school and she still has her first kiss. Ah, I'm so useless. I chased after her for so long and all I got was to hold her hand." Hijichu didn't say anything and looked out the window again. He picked up his phone and called Gunyenji. "Nyenji." Gunyenji was still sleeping in bed and only answered after the phone rang for a long time. "Professor He?" Gunyenji woke up as soon as she heard Hijichu's voice. She sat up in bed but her voice was still sleepy and hoarse. "What's up?" "I'm taking Mei Xiaowen to Harvard today, and I just remembered that you still need to get your injury checked out. I'll pick you up." Hijichu hung up. Gunyenji didn't even have a chance to object. Thanks to Chinlai's improved green ointment, the injury on her face had completely healed. Why would she need to go to the hospital? But Hijichu was taking Mei Xiaowen to Harvard today, and as the proper host, Gunyenji couldn't stay out of it. Although she actually wanted to sleep alone at home all day, she rushed into the bathroom to take a quick shower and picked out a ladylike white dress with white sneakers and a navy t-shirt. Her long hair was tied back with a hairband and she wore a navy baseball cap. She carried her small backpack and said to Yin Shixiang, "Brother Xiong, Professor he is taking Xiaowen to Harvard. I want to go have some fun." Yin Shixiang poked his head out of the room. "When are you coming back?" "I don't know. Probably in the evening. I'll call you." Gun Yinji's phone rang as she spoke. She glanced at it and said, "I have to go, they're already here to pick me up." She opened the door and ran out. Not long after Gun Yinji left, Yin Shixiang came downstairs in disguise and followed them to Harvard. He Jichu's limousine was very flashy, and Yin Shixiang couldn't miss it even if he wanted to. When they arrived at Harvard, Gun Yinji happily pointed out the various buildings to Mei Xiaowen and told him which faculty they belonged to. She then took him to the law faculty building to look around and take a few photos. Mei Xiaowen smiled. "I can show off to everyone when I get back that I've been to Harvard before too. In your dreams." Gun Yinji gave him a sidelong glance and joked with him, making He Jichu's presence seem unnecessary. However, He Jichu didn't seem to mind. He followed them unhurriedly and at some point, a cigarette appeared in his hand. He stood in a smoking area on Harvard University. Gun Yinji turned around and saw the flickering cigarette between his fingers. Her eyes flashed. He Jichu sensed something and looked up to see Gun Yinji staring at the cigarette between his fingers. "Okay, I won't smoke anymore." He chuckled as he threw the cigarette into a nearby trash can. Gun Yinji pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She turned to point to the School of Electrical Engineering building across from the law faculty. She said to Mei Xiaowen, "That's the School of Electrical Engineering. I know a few Chinese students there." "Yes, Yinji has a male idol there." He Jichu folded his hands behind his back and stood on the other side of Gun Yinji. He squinted at the School of Electrical Engineering building. "Male idol?" Mei Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Gun Yinji in shock. "Oh." Gun Yinji blushed and said sheepishly, "Professor, he was joking. I have many male idols." "Xiaowen, you're my male idol too." "Really?" Mei Xiaowen laughed. Although he knew Gun Yinji was joking, he couldn't help but be happy. He should be treated as a Prince Charming. His confidence, which had been shattered, instantly exploded again. "Of course." Gun Yinji nodded vigorously. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw He Jichu's cool gaze on her. Gun Yinji turned to flatter him. "Professor He, you're my male idol too. I'm so lucky today. I have 2 male idols walking around campus with me. It's so awesome." He Jichu glanced at Mei Xiaowen. He didn't understand Gun Yinji's words. Was he happy or sad? After all, He Jichu didn't want to accept the title of a male idol on the same level as Mei Xiaowen. He raised his chin. "Let's go over there. Your injury needs a follow-up." Mei Xiaowen quickly agreed. "Yinji, I was scared to death when I saw the injury on your face the other day. Are you okay now?" Gun Yinji touched her face and said smoothly, "I think I'm fine now. But I still need to get a diagnosis." He Jichu didn't say anything else. He took Gun Yinji and Mei Xiaowen to the Harvard Medical School affiliated hospital. This time he was looking for a dermatologist. "Dr. Thomas, thank you for your help." He Jichu pulled Gun Yinji over. "Look at her face. She was beaten up 2 days ago. Although the swelling has subsided, I'm worried that the insides aren't completely healed." Dr. Thomas examined Gun Yinji attentively. To be on the safe side, he even took an X-ray to make sure the skull wasn't deformed. They waited at the hospital for an hour before receiving the X-ray. "I can guarantee that she's recovering very well. Not only is her skull intact, but even her skin is healed. There's no scar at all." Dr. Thomas was an old man with a white beard. He was very kind to Gun Yinji. After the examination, he even gave her a lollipop. Gun Yinji sucked on the lollipop and smiled as she walked between He Jichu and Mei Xiaowen. As they walked along the corridor, Gun Yinji noticed that there were U.S. soldiers in camouflage uniforms standing guard at the entrance of one of the rooms. What kind of important person was living here? As soon as the thought popped into Gun Yinji's mind, she saw a woman with a white bandage on her head and one arm in a sling. Half of her face was swollen like a steamed bun. She was being supported by someone as she slowly walked out of the room. He Jichu stopped and pulled Gun Yinji to his side. "This way." He led her and Mei Xiaowen to another corridor. Although they walked quickly, the woman still saw them. It was Xan Xinggao, whose wrist had been broken and concussed by Gun Yinji. She stared at Gun Yinji's disappearing figure in shock. Why did she look so familiar? She asked the nurse who was supporting her, "Who was that girl? Do you recognize her?" The nurse shook her head. "I can ask for you." They had all seen the three people come from the dermatology room. The nurse called someone over and asked, "There were three people just now, two men and a woman. They came from that direction. Do you know who they are?" The person happened to be the dermatologist, Dr. Thomas's nurse. She told her, "That's Dr. Thomas's patient. Isn't that girl beautiful? I only know her surname is Gu, and she's a student of Professor He from the Faculty of Law. Her injuries have just healed. Fortunately, her face isn't disfigured, otherwise—" He stopped abruptly and glanced at Xan Xingao with some apprehension. Xan Xingao's skull was slightly crooked from the blow. Without cosmetic orthodontic surgery, her face would be disfigured. That was why her room was arranged next to the dermatology room. It would make it easier for Dr. Thomas to examine her and decide on a cosmetic surgery plan. Her surname was Gu, and she was He Jichu's student. Who else could it be? Xan Xingao felt a surge of anger rise from the bottom of her heart and was stuck in her throat. She turned around and entered the room. She picked up the phone and dialed the mysterious number. "I want to see Lieutenant Colonel Peter." Lieutenant Colonel Peter arrived at the Harvard Medical School affiliated hospital half an hour later. He was a middle-aged man with a big belly. He stood in front of Xan Xingao's bed with his hands clasped behind his back. He had a friendly smile on his face. "Xan, how are you? Are you feeling better?" Xan Xingao glared at him angrily. "I just want to ask you, why is Gu Nianji fine? She beat me up like this. Doesn't she have to be held criminally responsible?" Lieutenant Colonel Peter was furious. He hadn't told Xan Xingao about this yet. Xan Xingao had just woken up from a coma. She had just started her rehabilitation and was about to undergo cosmetic surgery. She had no idea what had happened after that. "Here's the thing." Lieutenant Colonel Peter rubbed his hands nervously. "You're not held criminally responsible for the fight." "What?" Xan Xingao felt a sweet lump in her throat. She was about to vomit blood. "What kind of law is that? I don't believe it. But it's the truth." Lieutenant Colonel Peter raised his sparse blonde eyebrows. "There are precedents. Baseball, ice hockey, all of them. Fights on the field are not held criminally responsible as long as no one is killed or seriously injured. She beat me up like this and that's not a serious injury?" Xan Xingao was on the verge of punching the bed. She was clinging to Gu Nianji because she was afraid and uncertain. She knew what she had done. Even the Wuxia Empire's international students had drawn a line with her. She wouldn't care if they just ignored her and isolated her. She was most afraid of what Gu Nianji had done, beating her up. If she didn't deal with it seriously, others would follow suit and take her life at any moment. From a medical point of view, your injury isn't considered a serious injury. Lieutenant Colonel Peter said matter-of-factly, "As for Gu, she was also injured. The doctor issued a certificate saying that her injury is comparable to yours." "That's impossible." Xan Xingao screamed, her voice echoing in the room. "She recovered a long time ago. I just saw her walk past my ward, swaggering around. How is she like me? I can't even get out of bed right now." "Is that so?" Lieutenant Colonel Peter frowned. "But she has a doctor's certificate." "Xan, you have to know that the court only looks at evidence. They only look at the doctor's certificate to confirm the injury." Xan Xingao gripped the bedsheets so tightly that the veins on the back of her hands were bulging. "Tell me, what do I have to do to make sure that Gu goes to jail?" Xan Xingao wouldn't let Gu Nianji go. She wanted to make an example out of her and the U.S. military to guarantee her safety. "I've done so much for you, you can't do this to me." Lieutenant Colonel Peter shook his head and spread his hands. "It's no use. She has Professor He's support, it'll be hard to sue her." "Xan, there's something I didn't tell you. We just settled with Professor He because he sued me and my department for lynching his students. All we did was ask the campus police to handcuff his students." Xan Xingao's eyes widened. "Is that hard?" "Yes, it's harder than you think." "I don't believe you." Xan Xingao spat out through clenched teeth. She closed her eyes and lay on the bed, panting slightly. Finally she said, "Lieutenant Colonel Peter, I want to find out what constitutes a serious injury." Lieutenant Colonel Peter looked at Xan Xingao and broke into a huge smile. "Xan, you're really smart." He waved at her. "I'll wait for your good news." Mei Xiaowen stayed in Boston for 6 days and flew home on the 7th day. He Jichu gave Gu Nianji the day off and arranged for a chauffeur and bodyguard to accompany them everywhere. Mei Xiaowen's head hurt when he saw that Gu Nianji didn't seem to mind and continued to have fun. She even told him that she had been attending classes every day since she arrived in Boston, from the classroom to the apartment. She had never had the chance to go to those places, and that it was all thanks to him that she could. Mei Xiaowen felt sorry for Gu Nianji and didn't mind the chauffeur and bodyguard following her around anymore. On the 7th day, Gu Nianji had just sent Mei Xiaowen off on the plane when she received a court summons. It turned out that Xan Xingao's condition had suddenly worsened and her brain had been severely damaged. The doctor diagnosed that the damage to her intelligence was irreparable. Simply put, she had beaten Xan Xingao to the point where she couldn't take care of herself. It was considered a serious injury in medical terms, so the court accepted her lawsuit and summoned Gu Nianji to appear in court. 200 words, 2 chapters in 1, including 3,200 monthly votes and chapters. That was all for the night. Thanks to Bai Yun Xiao for tipping Heshabi yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 146. Gu Nianji read the subpoena carefully several times and asked the postman who delivered it, "She's suing me for beating her until she can't take care of herself?" The postman nodded solemnly, "It's written on the subpoena." Gu Nianji signed on the postman's receipt. Even an idiot can file a complaint. Diske, she can't be that stupid, right? The postman who delivered the subpoena was from the US military and was there to watch Gu Nianji sign it. She blushed and said anxiously, she sued before she became an idiot. Because the injuries weren't serious, the court didn't accept it. Now the injuries are serious. Oh, Gu Nianji drawled meaningfully, so classmate Xen knew she would become an idiot before she became an idiot, so she filed the complaint in advance. The man realized he was making things worse and could only shut his mouth and not respond to anything Gu Nianji said. Gu Nianji didn't say anything else to him. It was obvious that Xan Xingao wasn't going to let her off the hook. If she pointed out the other party's flaws now, they might immediately investigate it and she would be the one at a disadvantage. Truth be told, Gu Nianji was also a law student and had excellent grades. Although the specific legal provisions between the Wuxia Empire and the United States were different, the legal principles were the same. She had also worked with He Jichu on cases for over a month and had a deeper understanding of the American legal system than the average person. She could find several flaws just by looking at the contents of the subpoena. Of course, it wasn't impossible for the other party to sue her, but they had better prove that Xan Xingao had become an idiot. Otherwise, Gu Nianji wasn't going to let them off easily. Gu Nianji narrowed her eyes slightly. The expression on her face was restrained and calm. She actually resembled Hua Xiaohan. What happened? Yin Shixiang asked as he came out of his room. He had heard someone at the door looking for Gu Nianji, saying the postman was delivering a letter. He saw through the peephole that it was a regular postman from the apartment, so he asked Gu Nianji to come out and receive the letter. However, he felt something was wrong when he saw Gu Nianji standing at the door for a long time. Nothing. Gu Nianji put the subpoena back into the envelope and passed it to Yin Shixiang. She said expressionlessly, "It's a court subpoena. Xan Xingao is suing me." She walked back to her room and slammed the door shut. She leaned against the door and did not move for a long time. Although she pretended to be fine on the outside, it wasn't that she wasn't afraid at all. It was obvious that Xan Xingao and the forces behind her were not going to let her off the hook. Hugging her shoulders, Gu Nianji curled up and sat down against the door. The setting sun shone in from the direction of the window, falling not far in front of her. She quietly watched the light of the setting sun change in front of her. Finally, it gradually sank into the west and the room became dark. Yin Shixiang took the envelope from Gu Nianji and opened it to see that it really was a subpoena from an American court. He immediately turned to his room and video called Zhao Liangzi. "Big Xiong, what's up? It's only 5 o'clock in the morning. You'd better have something urgent or else I won't let you off." Yin Shixiang asked seriously, "What about Hua Xiao? Is Hua Xiao there? I have something very important to talk to him about." Zhao Liangzi rubbed his eyes and glanced at him. "What is it? If it's really serious, I'll get Hua Xiao for you." "It's Nianji, she's being sued. They're saying she caused Xan Xingao's serious injury and will be held criminally responsible." That meant she was going to jail. Zhao Liangzi immediately sobered up. "Wait here, I'll get Hua Xiao for you." 30 seconds later, the video switched to Hua Xiaoheng's study. "Big Xiong, what happened?" Hua Xiaoheng's devastatingly handsome face appeared on the screen. His voice was steady and powerful with a mesmerizing magnetism. Yin Shixiang took a deep breath and told Hua Xiaoheng about the subpoena. I've already scanned it and sent it to little Zay. Hua Xiaoheng frowned. Why is it XN again? Did he Jichu take care of her? Yin Shixiang shook his head. I'm not sure. Mei Xiaowen came to the United States to see Nianji even though he was free these past few days. Mei Xiaowen went. Hua Xiaoheng asked dryly, what else is there that I don't know about? Yin Shixiang thought about it and began the story from the day Mei Xiaowen came to the United States. Professor he took Mei Xiaowen and Nianji around the Harvard campus for a day, then took her to the hospital for a checkup. Then Nianji spent a few days with Mei Xiaowen in Boston. She just sent him on the plane today, and when she got back from the airport she received a subpoena from the court. I'll let you know right away. Hua Xiaoheng held the mouse in his hand and clicked on a few documents on his computer. He also saw the scanned image of the original subpoena that Zhao Liangzi had sent him. He quietly read through it before asking, where's Nianji? She just went back to her room. Yin Shixiang poked his head out to look at Gu Nianji's room door. She's closed. Tell her to be quiet. Contact me tomorrow. Hua Xiaoheng ended the video call and called Zhao Liangzi over. Little Zay, we need to hold a meeting to discuss this. Gather all the relevant personnel in the small conference room in 10 minutes. Roger, Chief. Zhao Liangzi's usual cheeky smile disappeared as he opened the military's internal communication system and sent out orders to gather all the relevant personnel. He packed his briefcase and carried his laptop as he hurried out of the office to the small conference room. When he went downstairs, he happened to come face to face with a tall, voluptuous, and gorgeous woman. Little Zay, where are you going? She asked casually and stepped aside to make way. Zhao Liangzi saw her and nodded in greeting. Colonel Bai. Little Zay, my sister said she's coming to see me this weekend, are you free? This woman was the cousin of Bai Shuang, the new spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bai Yueran. She had just been transferred to the 6th Military Region from the Central Military Region. She was 2 years older than Bai Shuang, but was only 26 years old, but her rank was already one rank higher than Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang. Zhao Liangzi stretched out his hands to show Bai Yueran his things. Colonel Bai, do I look like I'm free? Little Zay, don't be so formal. If you don't mind, you can call me Yueran. Bai Yueran laughed heartily and patted Zhao Liangzi's shoulder. All right, go do what you need to do. I won't disturb you any longer, you're so anxious you're sweating. She giggled, her laughter like silk from a silkworm burrowing into Zhao Liangzi's ears and finally wrapping around his heart. He felt half his body go numb, a strange sensation that he was not used to. He didn't say anything else and hurried away. When he arrived at the small conference room, Zhao Liangzi saw that Chenlai was also there, along with 2 lieutenant colonels from the Special Operations Forces Legal Department. Why are you only here now? Hua Xiaoheng looked at his watch. You're the informant, but you're a minute later than the informant. Zhao Liangzi stood at attention honestly. I met Colonel Bai on the way here and had a few words with her, so I was delayed. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at him and didn't pursue the matter. Instead, it was the 2 people from the legal department who immediately said, Mr. Hua, Colonel Bai is now the director of the 6th Military Region Special Operations Forces Legal Department. Shouldn't we let her participate as well? This was the first chapter. The second chapter should be 2 chapters in one, including 3,300 monthly votes and more chapters. Early August, asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Other than that, let's talk about joining the group. The Major General Book Group number for the Chronicles of Cambrian. 146941331. When applying, if you were a book friend from Chidian, you had to say the Chidian subscription account name and reply to the group post. The group post was in the book review section, so those who were reading on their phones could see it by scrolling to the Major General's book review section. If you were a friend of QQ Read or Yun Chi, you could say the subscription account name and reply to QQ Read. The admin would send you a private message after joining the group. Oh, __. Oh. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.